The world is a vast, unbroken sheet of deep indigo, a darkness that stretches from the frozen ground to the starless sky above, rendered in heavy strokes of charcoal and slate. Here, at the edge of the great northern silence, the air does not move. It sits heavy and solid, a physical weight pressing down upon the earth. The cold is absolute. It is a presence, a distinct entity that occupies every inch of space not filled by the iron of the trucks or the bundled wool of the men. This is the hour before movement, the long, drawn-out breath of anticipation before the convoy engages with the ice. The scene is still, composed of shadows and faint, smudged light. To look upon this landscape is to see a drawing made on rough, dark paper, where the blacks are not empty voids but dense layers of pigment, absorbing all warmth. The ice lake extends forward, a flat monochromatic plain that swallows the horizon. It is a surface of hardened water, thick and treacherous, hidden beneath a skin of wind-scoured snow. The snow is not white here. In the deep gloom of the polar night, it is a pale, ghostly gray, a smudge of pastel chalk dusted over the black tooth of the underlying darkness. There are no trees to break the wind, no hills to catch the eye. There is only the flat, endless expanse, a canvas waiting for the slow, grinding passage of history. The trucks are arranged in a staggered line, dark silhouettes against the darker sky. They are heavy machines, built of steel and iron, their forms blocky and utilitarian. In this light they appear as immense, dormant beasts, their edges softened by the dimness, their details lost in the accumulation of frost. They do not look like vehicles of speed. They look like monuments to endurance, anchored to the frozen earth by the sheer weight of their cargo. The tires are massive, thick rubber treads biting into the hard-packed snow, chained with heavy links of iron that hang loose and cold, waiting for the rotation that will pull them taut. There is a rhythm to the stillness, a slow, pulsating beat that comes from the idling engines. It is a low, thrumming vibration, a deep bass note that can be felt in the chest more than it can be heard. The sound is muffled by the immensity of the open space, dampened by the thick air. White plumes of exhaust rise steadily from the vertical pipes, thick columns of vapor that drift lazily upward, curling and dissipating into the blue-black void. The exhaust is the only thing that moves with any speed, a slow, rhythmic puffing that marks the time in seconds and minutes, a gray fog mixing with the biting clarity of the freeze. Near the lead truck, a lantern hangs from a hook on the side of the wooden cargo bed. The light it casts is a warm, buttery yellow, a soft sphere of illumination that struggles against the encroaching dark. It is a pastel smear of amber in a world of blue. The light creates deep, dramatic shadows, casting long, distorted shapes across the snow. The texture of the wood on the truck's side is illuminated in high relief, the grain rough and splintered, the metal bolts frosted white. The lantern light does not reach far. It creates a small island of visibility, a fragile circle of warmth that highlights the texture of the falling snow. The snow begins to fall again, not in a storm, but in a slow, deliberate descent of large, dry flakes. They drift down through the cone of lantern light, appearing for a brief moment as brilliant sparks of gold before vanishing into the shadow below. They settle on the hoods of the trucks, on the shoulders of the drivers, on the vast, unfeeling ice. Each flake adds a microscopic layer to the world, a quiet accumulation of silence. The sound of the snow falling is the sound of nothingness, a soft, frictionless arrival that deepens the hush of the night. A figure stands by the front wheel of the second truck. He is a shape defined by layers, thick wool trousers, a heavy coat of shearling and leather, a scarf wrapped multiple times around the neck. He is motionless, his gloved hands tucked deep into his pockets. In this drawing of the night, he is a dark smudge, a concentration of heavy pencil strokes. His breath comes in visible clouds, rhythmic and slow, matching the idle of the diesel engine beside him. He does not look at the other drivers. He looks out at the lake, at the gray void where the road should be. He is reading the ice, listening to the silence, feeling the temperature drop by fractions of a degree. The cold penetrates everything. It seeps through the leather of boots, seeking the warmth of the toes. It stiffens the grease in the wheel bearings. It turns the oil in the crankcases into thick, sluggish syrup. The metal of the truck is dangerous to touch. To place a bare hand upon the door handle would be to bond flesh to iron instantly. The drivers know this. They move with a deliberate slowness, a conservation of energy. There are no sudden jerks, no quick turns. Every movement is calculated, measured against the resistance of the heavy clothing and the numbing air. The hood of the lead truck is a landscape in itself. The curve of the metal is coated in a layer of rime frost, a crystalline growth that sparkles faintly in the peripheral glow of the headlights. The frost creates a texture like rough paper, a fractal pattern of freezing water that covers the paint. The emblem on the front, a simple badge of chrome, is obscured by ice. The radiator grille is a dark maw, breathing in the freezing air and exhaling heat. If one were to stand close, there would be a faint smell of hot oil and unburnt fuel, the scent of machinery working to stay alive in a world that wishes it to stop. Behind the line of trucks, the land they are leaving is indistinguishable from the lake they are about to enter. It is all one continuous shade of twilight blue. The distinction between solid ground and frozen water is merely a matter of faith and maps. The shore is a low rise of snow-covered rock, smoothed by the wind, barely visible as a darkening of the horizon. The supply depot is a collection of low, wooden structures, their windows dark, their chimneys emitting thin trails of smoke that rise straight up, undisturbed by any breeze. They look abandoned, swallowed by the winter, faint sketches in the background of this composition. The cargo in the trucks is heavy. Crates of wood, rough-hewn and sturdy, are stacked high under the canvas tarpaulins. The canvas is stiff, frozen into rigid folds that do not flap. It is painted in drab greens and browns, colors that have been muted by the low light until they are almost black. Ropes lash the tarps down, thick hemp lines that are as hard as steel cables in this temperature. The knots are frozen solid. The cargo is nameless, faceless supply, food, fuel, machine parts, essential items for the survival of those on the other side of the lake, yet utterly mundane in their presence here. They are simply weight. They are the burden that presses the tires into the ice, the reason for the risk, the anchor of the mission. The driver of the lead truck lifts a boot and kicks the tire. The sound is a dull thud, deadened by the rubber and the snow. It is a ritual, a tactile check of the pressure. The tire does not yield. It is hard, pressurized, ready to carry the load. The chains rattle with a metallic clink, a sharp, clear sound that cuts through the drone of the engines for a split second before dying away. The silence rushes back in to fill the void instantly. The driver adjusts his hat, pulling the fur flaps lower over his ears. The texture of the fur is coarse, bristling with frost where his breath has touched it. Under the chassis of the truck, the shadows are absolute. It is a pool of black ink, hiding the axles, the drive shafts, the differentials. The mechanics of the vehicle are hidden, secret workings that must function perfectly in the cold. A single drop of oil hangs from a bolt, suspended, too thick to fall. It catches a glint of the lantern light, a tiny, suspended jewel of amber fluid waiting. The ground beneath the truck is stained with older drops, black spots on the gray snow, evidence of the machine's long wait. The wind begins to shift. It picks up the loose snow from the surface of the lake and drives it low across the ice. These are not falling flakes, but drifting grains, hard and sand-like. They hiss as they slide over the frozen crust. The sound is like dry leaves skittering on pavement, a continuous, sibilant whisper. The drift snakes around the tires, piling up in small dunes against the rubber, burying the bottom links of the chains. It flows like water, a river of white dust moving over the solid blue ocean of ice. It smooths out the tracks of the men, erasing their footprints within minutes, returning the surface to a pristine, untouched state. The sensation of standing there is one of slow fossilization. The blood moves slower. The thoughts move slower. The mind focuses on the immediate sensory inputs, the sting of the air on the exposed strip of skin around the eyes, the smell of the exhaust, the weight of the boots. There is no room for complex anxiety, only a dull, persistent awareness of the cold. It is a world without sharp edges, blurred by the pastel softness of the snow and the dim light, yet physically harder than stone. Inside the cab of the second truck, the darkness is complete save for the faint green glow of the instrument dials. The glass of the windshield is framed by frost, creeping inward from the corners. The driver sits behind the wheel, his silhouette merging with the seat. He is not moving. He is waiting for the signal. The interior smells of old leather, cold metal, and the faint, sweet scent of tobacco smoke trapped in the fabric of the roof liner. The steering wheel is a large, thin hoop of hard plastic, cracked in places, worn smooth by countless hands. It is freezing to the touch. The driver wears heavy mittens, resting his hands on his lap, preserving the warmth. He watches the taillights of the truck ahead, two dim red eyes staring back at him through the drifting snow. The red light of the taillights does not illuminate. It merely marks a position. It is a dull, matte crimson, lacking the power to cut through the gloom. It reflects softly on the snow immediately beneath it, staining the white drift with a bloody hue. The contrast between the deep blue of the surroundings and these small points of red is the only color variation in the scene. It is a composition of cold tones, broken only by these faint warnings of heat and presence. Far out on the lake, the ice groans. It is a sound from the deep, a tectonic shifting of the frozen plates. It starts as a low boom, distant and muffled, traveling through the water and the ice for miles before reaching the shore. It sounds like thunder trapped underground. Then comes the crack, a sharp, high-pitched snap that echoes like a rifle shot in a canyon. The ice is alive. It expands and contracts with the temperature, stressing and relieving itself. To the drivers, this is the voice of the road. It is a reminder that the surface they are about to drive on is not land, but a temporary solid suspended over the deep. The sound vibrates through the soles of their boots, a tremor that passes through the earth and into the bone. The mechanic, a smaller figure carrying a toolbox, walks down the line of trucks. His movement is hampered by the depth of the snow and the weight of his gear. He walks with a rolling gait, lifting his knees high. The toolbox is metal, its paint chipped and scarred. It clanks against his leg with a muffled rhythm. He stops at the third truck, crouching down to inspect a coupling. The lantern he carries swings in his hand, the light swaying back and forth, making the shadows of the wheels dance and stretch. He reaches out a gloved hand and tugs on a cable. It is tight. He nods, a gesture lost in the darkness, and stands up again. The effort of standing is visible. The cold makes the joints stiff, the muscles slow to respond. The sky above offers no comfort. It is a heavy blanket of cloud, low and oppressive. There are no stars to guide the way, no moon to light the path. There is only the diffuse, ambient grayness of the snow reflecting the minimal light that exists in the world. It is a closed system, a room with the ceiling lowered. The horizon is not a line but a gradient, a fading of the dark blue earth into the dark gray sky. Somewhere in that gradient lies the destination, miles away across the void. The breath of the trucks, the exhaust, continues to pool around the convoy. It creates a microclimate of fog, a haze that softens the outlines of the vehicles even further. In the vintage drawing of this moment, the trucks would be rendered with soft, hazy edges, their forms blending into the background. The pencil strokes would be light and feathery where the smoke rises, contrasting with the heavy, dense shading of the tires and the undercarriages. The scene is static, a tableau of preparation frozen in time. One of the drivers strikes a match. The sound of the ignition is a sudden, sharp scratch, followed by a flare of intense, orange light. For a second, a face is illuminated, weather-beaten, lined eyes narrowed against the glare. The flame reflects in the dark pupils, a tiny spark of life. Then the hands cup around the flame, shielding it from the wind, and the face disappears back into the shadow. The smoke from the cigarette joins the smoke from the engines, a thin, blue wisp rising into the heavy air. The smell of the tobacco is sharp and organic, cutting through the chemical odor of the diesel. It is a human smell, a reminder of the fragility of the men operating these iron giants. The supply crates in the back of the trucks creak as the wood contracts in the cold. It is a subtle sound, a series of small ticks and pops. The cargo is settling. The tarpaulins are stiff boards of canvas. If one were to tap them, they would sound like plywood. The ropes are covered in a thin layer of hoarfrost, making them look like white lines drawn against the dark fabric. Every texture is amplified by the cold. The roughness of the wool, the smoothness of the ice, the grain of the wood, the pitting of the rusted metal. The waiting continues. There is no rush. To rush on the ice is to invite disaster. The convoy moves only when every gauge is checked, every lashing secure, every driver ready. Time expands here. A minute feels like an hour. The cold slows down the perception of time, freezing the moments into long, stretched-out sequences. The drivers stand or sit in their bubbles of warmth, meditative, slipping into a state of hibernation while awake. They preserve their focus. They let the cold strip away all unnecessary thoughts. There is only the truck, the ice, and the darkness. The lead driver climbs slowly up the side of his cab. The metal step is slippery. His boot seeks purchase on the diamond plate steel. He pulls himself up, the heavy coat bunching around his shoulders. The door opens with a groan of dry hinges, revealing the dark interior. He slides inside and the door slams shut with a heavy, final clunk. The sound isolates him. He is now separated from the wind, enclosed in the vibrating metal shell. He is the brain of the machine. The other drivers watch. They see the movement. They know the time is approaching. One by one, other doors open and close. The slam of metal doors echoes down the line, a domino effect of heavy thuds. The figures on the snow disappear, swallowed by the machines. The landscape is now empty of humans. There are only the trucks, the idling beasts, breathing their white smoke into the night. The lantern on the side of the lead truck is unhooked by an unseen hand and pulled inside. The warm spot of yellow light vanishes, leaving the scene in a deeper, more uniform blue. The only light now comes from the headlights, long, yellow beams that cut parallel paths through the drifting snow, illuminating the nothingness ahead. The beams of the headlights catch the texture of the ice road. It is not smooth. It is ridged, bumped, scarred by the wind and previous passages. The light reveals the millions of tiny imperfections in the surface, the shadows of small drifts, the glitter of ice crystals. The light does not penetrate far. It is swallowed by the density of the dark. It illuminates a tunnel of visibility, a corridor of light leading into the void. Beyond the reach of the beams, the darkness is total, a wall of black pastel waiting to be pushed back. Inside the cabs, the heaters are turned up, but they fight a losing battle. The windows fog up with the breath of the drivers, requiring constant wiping. The rag used to wipe the glass becomes damp and cold. The drivers peer through the clear patches they create, their eyes scanning the illuminated patch of snow ahead. They check their gauges. Oil pressure steady. Temperature rising slowly. Fuel tanks full. The needles on the dials tremble with the vibration of the engines. The green glow of the dashboard lights the driver's hands on the wheels, highlighting the texture of the leather gloves and the knuckles beneath. The vibration of the engine travels up the steering column, into the arms, into the shoulders. It becomes a part of the body. The driver and the truck become a single organism, connected by touch and sound. The hum of the diesel is the heartbeat of this organism. It is a steady, reassuring rhythm, a promise of power. The gears are long levers rising from the floor, topped with smooth knobs. They are cold, stiff, waiting to be engaged. The clutch pedals are heavy, requiring force to depress. Driving these trucks is physical labor, a wrestling match with steel and hydraulics. The lead truck revs its engine. The pitch of the drone rises, deepening into a roar. A larger cloud of black smoke erupts from the stack, momentarily blotting out the sky. The truck shudders. The tires shift slightly, crushing the snow beneath them. The chains bite. The connection is made. The inertia of the stationary line is about to be broken, but not yet. The engine settles back into its idle. It was a test, a clearing of the throat. The silence returns, wrapped around the low thrum. The wind sweeps across the open lake, carrying with it the sound of the vast emptiness. It whistles faintly around the corners of the cabs, a mournful, hollow sound. It buffets the canvas covers, seeking a way in. It piles more snow against the wheels. The environment is hostile, patient, eroding the warmth of the machines. The trucks are intruders here, temporary specks of heat in a universe of absolute zero. The battle between the mechanical and the elemental is silent and constant. The texture of the darkness seems to thicken. The blue turns to a deep charcoal. The visual style of the scene is heavy on shadow, with the trucks appearing as dense blocks of darkness against the slightly lighter gray of the snow. The headlights are the only piercing element, sharp yellow cones that have texture and grain, like chalk drawn forcefully on dark paper. The light reveals the swirling particles of snow, freezing them in midair, turning them into streaks of white dust. A radio crackles in the lead truck. It is a burst of static white noise that sounds like tearing paper. Then a voice, distorted and metallic, barely intelligible. A confirmation, a command. The static cuts out. The silence is re-established, but it has changed quality. It is no longer the silence of waiting, it is the silence of imminent action. The drivers shift in their seats. They grip the wheels tighter. They breathe deeper. The condensation on the windows grows thicker. The supply run is about to begin. The ice awaits. It stretches out for miles, a fragile skin over the deep black water. The trucks are heavy. The risk is calculated. The cold is indifferent. The story of the crossing is written in the slow rotation of tires, the burning of fuel, the endurance of men who sit in dark cabins and stare into the night. The first gear is engaged in the lead truck. The grinding of the metal gears is a harsh, mechanical gnashing. The beast is waking up. The tires creep forward just an inch. The chains clink. The journey into the blue void initiates, not with a bang, but with a slow, grinding crawl against the friction of the frozen world. The rear lights of the convoy glow like embers in a dying fire. They are the last things to be seen from the shore, a string of red beads fading into the storm. The wind erases the tire tracks almost as soon as they are made. The lake remains vast, silent, and overwhelmingly cold. The drawing is dark, the paper is rough, and the pencil moves slowly, shading in the endless night. The movement is so slow it is almost imperceptible, a glacial shift of iron and rubber against the resistance of the frozen world. The lead truck does not leap forward. It leans into the harness of its own weight, the engine note deepening into a guttural, resonant drone that vibrates through the frame of the chassis. The tires, massive and black, begin their rotation, the heavy chains draped across them lifting and falling with a rhythmic, metallic clatter. Clink, drag, clink, drag. The sound is the only metronome in a timeless night. The truck inches forward, breaking the static bond it held with the snow, and the line of vehicles behind it mimics the motion, a sluggish awakening of a dormant beast. From the perspective of the trailing driver, the world is reduced to a singular focal point, the red taillights of the truck ahead. They are dim, rectangular glowing embers in the vast charcoal darkness. They are not bright enough to illuminate the snow. They merely exist as anchor points, fixed coordinates in a void that lacks all other reference. As the convoy stretches out, the gap between the trucks widens. The standard operating procedure dictates distance. Heavy trucks on floating ice cannot bunch together. Their combined weight would bow the surface, creating a depression that would shatter the fragile skin of the lake. So they separate, pushing apart until each vehicle is a solitary island, connected only by the visual thread of those red lights and the invisible track of the road. The transition from the solid ground of the shore to the ice of the lake is marked not by a sign, but by a subtle change in the vibration. On the land, the ride is jarring, a series of hard, uneven bumps as the frozen earth resists the suspension. But as the tires cross the unseen boundary onto the lake, the sensation smooths out. The ice is flat, a leveled plain of water frozen in a moment of calm. The truck settles. The violent shaking is replaced by a long, undulating sway, a gentle rocking motion that mimics the movement of a ship at sea. The suspension compresses slowly and releases slowly, absorbing the minor imperfections of the ice road. Inside the cab, the driver sits encased in a cocoon of sensory limitation. The darkness outside is absolute, pressing against the glass like a physical weight. The only light comes from the dashboard, a cluster of analog dials glowing with a faint, sickly green phosphorescence. The light is grainy, illuminating the dust motes that float in the air, tiny particles of lint and ash suspended in the cabin's atmosphere. The gauges tell the story of the engine's labor. The needle of the tachometer holds steady at a low cruising RPM. The oil pressure gauge creates a small arc of safety. The temperature needle barely climbs above the bottom peg. The glass faces of the dials are dusty, obscured by fingerprints and the grime of 1,000 miles. The steering wheel is a large black circle in the green gloom. It is thin and hard, made of bakelite or worn plastic, cold to the touch even through the thick leather mittens. The driver's hands rest on the rim at the 4 and 8 o'clock positions, not gripping but guiding. On the ice, there are no sharp turns. The road is a suggestion, a plowed lane that wanders slightly but mostly creates a straight line into the nothingness. To steer too sharply is to invite a skid, and a skid on the ice is a slow-motion slide into disaster. So the hands remain still, making microscopic corrections, feeling the feedback of the ice through the mechanical linkage of the steering column. The windshield is a panoramic frame of the night. It is not clear glass. It is a battleground of temperature. The heater defroster blows a stream of lukewarm air against the bottom of the pane, creating a semicircle of clarity. Beyond this arc, the glass is frosted with complex, fern-like patterns of ice, growing inward from the edges. These ice flowers are beautiful and dangerous, obscuring the peripheral vision, narrowing the world down to the tunnel of the headlights. The wiper blades are parked at the bottom, black rubber strips frozen hard. Occasionally, the driver reaches out and flips a switch, and the wipers sweep across the glass with a dry, rhythmic squeak. They clear away the fresh, dry snow that accumulates, pushing it to the side in small, white ridges. Squeak, pause, squeak, pause. The rhythm is hypnotic. The sound of the engine is a constant, monotonous roar. It is not a noise anymore. It is the background radiation of existence. It fills the ears, drowns out thoughts, and becomes a physical pressure in the chest. It is a deep, baritone hum that varies only slightly as the tires encounter patches of deeper snow. The transmission whines with a high-pitched harmonic, a singing gear that overlays the bass of the exhaust. Inside this sonic envelope, the driver is isolated. He cannot hear the wind outside, though he can see it blowing the snow across the beams of the headlights. He cannot hear the crunch of the ice. He hears only the machine that keeps him alive. To look at the scene from above, as if viewing a dark, textured drawing, the convoy is a series of small, warm sparks drifting across a vast, blue-gray sheet of paper. The ice lake is rendered in broad, horizontal strokes of slate and indigo, suggesting a limitless expanse. The trucks are dense blocks of shadow, barely distinguishable from the background except for the cones of yellow light they project. The light beams catch the texture of the snow, highlighting the ridges and the drifts, creating a stark contrast between the illuminated white and the surrounding black. The smoke from the exhaust pipes trails behind each truck, a smudge of gray charcoal that lingers in the still air, marking the path long after the vehicle has passed. The cold inside the cab is a creeping presence. Despite the heater, the metal of the door is freezing. A draft leaks in through the seal around the window, a thin knife of icy air that cuts across the driver's left shoulder. He adjusts his scarf, pulling the rough wool higher around his neck. The texture of the wool is scratchy against his stubble. He can feel the cold radiating from the floorboards, seeping through the soles of his heavy boots. His toes are numb, distant appendages that he wiggles rhythmically to keep the blood flowing. The sensation is one of dull, aching heaviness. The cold makes the body feel heavy, as if gravity has increased. On the passenger seat, a thermos rolls slightly with the motion of the truck. It is a battered cylinder of stainless steel, dented and scarred, with a cup screwed on top. It contains coffee, black and bitter, but the driver does not reach for it yet. To stop driving, even for a second to pour a drink, requires a break in the concentration. The thermos is a promise of warmth for later, a deferred comfort. Beside it lies a pair of sunglasses, useless in the dark, and a crumpled map that hasn't been looked at in hours. The map is irrelevant here. There is only one way, forward, following the tracks of the truck ahead. The ice itself is not a uniform surface. In the headlight beams, it reveals its history. There are old tracks, frozen into ruts, where previous convoys have passed. These ruts catch the wheels, guiding the truck like a train on rails. The driver fights the wheel gently to keep from climbing out of the ruts. There are patches of polished blue ice, swept clean by the wind, where the headlights reflect perfectly, creating a mirror image of the beams on the ground. There are drifts of hard-packed snow, shaped like waves, which cause the truck to shudder as it plows through them. And there are the cracks, dark, jagged lines that zigzag across the road, fissures in the armor of the lake. They are sealed with fresh water and frozen over, but they are visible scars, reminders of the depth below. The distance between the trucks is measured in time, not feet. A 10-second gap, a 20-second gap. The driver counts the seconds in his head, a subconscious tally. 1, 2, 3. The red lights ahead are small, steady. If they get larger, he lifts his foot off the accelerator, letting the engine braking slow the heavy machine. The deceleration is smooth, a gradual loss of momentum. If the lights get smaller, he presses down, feeding more diesel into the cylinders. The pedal is stiff, offering resistance. The connection between the foot and the engine is mechanical and direct. The dance is slow, a constant minute adjustment of speed to maintain the equilibrium of the line. Shadows play tricks in the cab. The lantern light from the depot is long gone, and now the only illumination comes from the dash and the headlights. Shadows from the steering wheel spokes rotate across the driver's lap. The gear shift lever casts a long, thin shadow across the floor mat. The shaking of the truck makes these shadows vibrate, giving them a nervous energy. In the peripheral vision, the darkness outside seems to move. Shapes appear in the swirling snow, phantom trees, imaginary structures, figures that are not there. It is the mind trying to find patterns in the chaos of the white noise. The driver blinks, heavy-lidded, and the shapes dissolve back into drifting snow. The air in the cab is dry and stale. It smells of diesel fumes that have leaked past the seals, of old rubber, of the heated dust in the defroster vents. It catches in the throat. The driver's breath is no longer visible as a cloud, the heater having warmed the air just enough to dissipate the vapor, but the dryness cracks the lips. He runs his tongue over them, tasting the salt of his own skin. He is thirsty, but the thirst is a distant signal, muffled by the fatigue and the focus. The act of swallowing is deliberate. Behind the driver in the sleeper berth there is nothing but piled gear. Spare blankets, a toolbox, a jug of emergency water frozen solid. The space is dark, a cave behind the seat. It adds to the sense of enclosure. The truck is a small, self-contained world, a capsule of survival moving through a vacuum. The back wall of the cab is cold, conducting the freezing temperature from the cargo bed just inches away. The cargo bed itself, visible only in the mind's eye of the driver, is a landscape of frozen shapes. The tarpaulins are rigid, sculpted by the wind into sharp ridges and folds. The ropes that lash them down are as hard as iron bars. The crates beneath the canvas are silent, heavy blocks of mass. They do not shift. The ride on the ice is too smooth for the cargo to bounce. It is a dead weight, pressing the tires into the ice, increasing the traction, increasing the stress on the frozen sheet. The weight is a paradox. It provides the grip needed to move, but it is also the threat that could sink them. The convoy passes a marker. It is a simple wooden stake driven into the ice, wrapped with a strip of reflective tape. As the headlights hit it, the tape flares with a brilliant silver light, a momentary star in the darkness. It flashes past the window and is gone, swallowed by the rearward gloom. These markers are the only signposts. They are placed by the scout teams, brave souls who drive light vehicles ahead to test the ice thickness. They are the breadcrumbs in the forest. Seeing one is a small relief, a confirmation that the truck is still on the designated path. The wind picks up. The driver feels it not as a breeze but as a force pushing against the side of the truck. The large, boxy shape of the cargo area acts as a sail. The truck leans slightly to the left. The driver corrects, turning the wheel a fraction of an inch to the right. The wind howls around the side mirrors, a high-pitched, mournful whistle that penetrates the glass. The snow blows horizontally now, streaming across the windshield in long, white streaks. It looks like the truck is traveling at warp speed through the stars, but the speedometer reads only 25 miles per hour. The disconnect between the visual speed of the snow and the physical speed of the truck is disorienting. The dashboard clock is broken. The hands are stuck at 4:10, a time that has no meaning. Time is measured only by the odometer, by the slow accumulation of miles. The numbers on the odometer drum roll over with a sluggish click. The tenths of a mile turn slowly, white number, black background. The whole miles turn even slower, white number, black background. It is a slow countdown to nowhere. The driver watches the numbers align, a mesmerizing mechanical process. Click. A new mile. Click. Another tenth. The monotony is the enemy. It dulls the reflexes. It lulls the brain into a state of alpha waves, a waking sleep. The eyes remain open, staring at the red lights, but the mind wanders. It drifts to the warmth of a fire, to the taste of hot food, to memories of summer. These thoughts are dangerous. They detach the driver from the reality of the ice. He shakes his head, a physical jerk to reset his focus. He rolls his shoulders, feeling the stiffness in the muscles. He grips the wheel tighter, forcing himself to feel the texture of the plastic, to be present in the cold, dark box. The darkness outside is not uniform. It has texture. The drawing of the night is done on rough paper, and the charcoal does not cover the valleys of the grain. There are specks of lighter gray, hints of shapes that might be pressure ridges in the ice or drifts of snow. The headlights carve a tunnel through this textured dark. The light is yellow, vintage, and warm, fading at the edges into a muddy brown before being consumed by the blue-black. The beams bounce slightly with the motion of the truck, making the shadows of the ice drifts lengthen and shorten in a rhythmic dance. Beneath the wheels, the ice is 3 feet thick. It is a suspended floor over water that is hundreds of feet deep. The water is black, cold, and silent. It is a hidden world, separated from the truck by a layer of frozen crystal. The driver knows this. He visualizes the depth. He imagines the dark water pressing up against the bottom of the ice, the buoyancy fighting the weight of the steel. It is a fragile equilibrium. Sometimes a loud crack echoes through the cabin, sounding like a gunshot. It is the ice adjusting to the weight. The driver does not flinch. He is used to the voice of the lake. He keeps his foot steady on the accelerator. The convoy is a living thing, a segmented worm crawling across the waste. If the lead truck slows, the message ripples back through the line, a wave of red brake lights flaring up in sequence. If the lead truck speeds up, the gap opens, and the trailing drivers must gently close it. They are connected by invisible threads of reaction time and physics. They are alone together. The snow on the hood of the truck has formed a permanent sculpture. The heat from the engine melts the bottom layer, but the wind freezes the top, creating a crust of ice. It looks like a miniature landscape of white dunes on the green metal of the hood. The radiator ornament, a chrome bulldog or a winged letter, is completely encased in ice, a frozen figurehead leading the way. The headlights cast a glow on this hood snow, making it sparkle with a diamond-like intensity that is almost too bright to look at. The vibrations of the road travel up through the seat. It is a massage of numbness. The lower back aches with a dull, throbbing pain. The legs are heavy. The right foot, held in the same position on the pedal for an hour, begins to cramp. The driver shifts his weight, lifting the leg for a second, then placing it back. The engine note changes pitch for that brief second, a dip in the drone before returning to the steady hum. It is a reminder of the delicate control required. Far to the left, a faint glow appears on the horizon. It is not the sun, it is the aurora borealis. Weak pale green curtains of light shimmering in the upper atmosphere. They are ghostly, washed out, barely visible against the dark sky. They look like smudges of pastel chalk, erased and redrawn by an invisible hand. They offer no light to drive by, only a sense of the immense scale of the north. The driver glances at them, acknowledging their presence, but returns his gaze to the road. The lights in the sky are distant. The ice is immediate. The truck hits a patch of rough ice. The steering wheel jerks in the hands. The suspension thuds. The tools in the back rattle. The thermos wobbles. The driver reacts instantly, loosening his grip to let the wheels find their path, then tightening it to correct the line. The heart rate spikes for a second, then settles. It was just a patch of shatter, broken ice refrozen in a jumble. The smooth sway returns. The drone continues. Everything is heavy. The air is heavy with cold. The truck is heavy with cargo. The eyelids are heavy with fatigue. The darkness is a heavy blanket that smothers the world. The story of the drive is the story of pushing against this weight, of moving mass through a resisting medium. It is a slow, grinding battle of attrition. There is no victory, only the continuation of movement. The rearview mirror is a black rectangle. There is nothing to see behind. The darkness closes in immediately after the truck passes. The red taillights of the truck behind are invisible from this angle, or perhaps too far back to be seen through the spray of snow. The driver is driving into a tunnel of light, leaving a tunnel of dark. The sense of forward motion is the only reality. The past is erased by the wind. The future is illuminated only 50 feet at a time. The charcoal sketch of the scene remains static in its mood, even as the trucks move. The palette is restricted: deep indigo, slate gray, charcoal black, sickly instrument green, and the warm, dusty yellow of the headlights. The textures are rough: rusted metal, frozen rubber, wool, scratched glass, chipped ice. The lines are heavy and deliberate. There is no delicacy here, only the blunt force of survival. The heater fan develops a small tick, 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 a rhythmic imperfection in the drone. It is annoying, then it becomes part of the background, then it becomes a comforting companion. It marks the time. It is a small mechanical heartbeat within the larger mechanical beast. The driver listens to it, synchronizing his breathing with the tick. In 2, 3, 4, out 2, 3, 4. The trance deepens. The ice road stretches on, an endless ribbon of white in a world of blue. The shore has ceased to exist. It has been swallowed by the retrospective darkness, erased as if it were a temporary sketch on a chalkboard that has now been wiped clean. There is no longer a behind, nor a before. There is only the center of the lake, a geographical null point where the concepts of distance and direction dissolve into a uniform gray void. The convoy is suspended in a capsule of night, a string of heavy iron beads motionless in their relative positions, yet moving across the planetary surface at a crawl. The visual field is dominated by the absence of landmarks. To the left, darkness; to the right, darkness. Above, a low ceiling of cloud that reflects nothing, a matte lid placed over the world. Below, the ice, illuminated only in the narrow, fan-shaped wedges of the headlights. The sensation of driving here is akin to navigating a submarine through deep water. The pressure is palpable. It is not the pressure of water, but the pressure of the cold and the vast emptiness. The air outside the cab is dense, solidifying with every drop in temperature. It presses against the glass, seeking entry. The interior of the truck is a small, pressurized bubble of survival. The heater struggles, its fan whirring with a high-pitched, desperate rhythm, pushing air that is merely less cold than the outside, rather than truly warm. The heat does not circulate. It pools in small pockets, leaving the corners of the cab to freeze. The ice surface changes texture. It transitions from the snow-packed tracks of the near shore to the naked, wind-scoured blue ice of the deep lake. The sound of the tires changes instantly. The muffled crunch of snow is replaced by a hard, hollow drumming. The chains do not sink in. They strike the hard surface with a sharp, staccato rhythm. Clack, 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 clack. The vibration becomes more acute, a high-frequency rattle that buzzes in the dashboard, making the needles of the gauges blur slightly. The steering wheel feels lighter, the friction between the rubber and the road reduced to a terrifying minimum. The truck feels as though it is floating, skating on a film of molecular smoothness. In this vintage drawing of the night, the blue ice is rendered in strokes of deep cobalt and Prussian blue, layered over black. It has a sheen, a glossy finish that catches the headlight beams and throws them forward in long, streaking reflections. The ice looks like dark glass, polished and immense. Deep within the ice, visible only as vague shadows under the surface, are the fractures and stress lines, the scar tissue of the lake. They appear as faint, white veins in the dark marble, frozen remnants of past movements. The driver's focus narrows to the friction of the wheels. He feels the grip through the seat of his pants. He knows that on this blue ice, the brakes are useless. To touch the brake pedal would be to break the fragile adhesion, sending the 20-ton machine into a slow, rotating slide that would end only when momentum exhausted itself or the truck found a weak spot to punch through. So he drives with the throttle alone, modulating the speed by minute adjustments of his right foot. Lift slightly to slow down, press slightly to maintain momentum against the wind. It is a delicate, tactile conversation with the physics of motion. A pressure ridge appears ahead. In the flat, two-dimensional world of the lake, it looks like a scar on the paper, a raised welt of jagged lines. It is where two tectonic plates of ice have collided and buckled, forcing slabs of frozen water upward into a chaotic wall. The convoy slows. The brake lights of the truck ahead flare, a sudden bloom of red that reflects on the glossy ice like a pool of spilled blood. The driver lifts his foot. The engine note drops from a drone to a low, grumbling idle. The truck coasts, its heavy mass carrying it forward with relentless inertia. The ridge is a chaotic jumble of blocks, some as large as the truck's wheels, others small shards of crystal. They are piled in a jagged line that stretches across the headlight beams into the darkness on either side. A path has been cleared through it, a narrow gap where the blocks have been pushed aside or crushed flat by the scout dozers. But the surface is uneven, a ramp of broken ice. The truck ahead creeps over it. The trailer tilts wildly to the left, then the right, the suspension groaning audibly even over the distance. Then it levels out and continues. Now it is this driver's turn. He downshifts. The gear lever fights him, the oil in the transmission thick and reluctant. He double clutches, a precise, practiced movement of the feet, clutch in, neutral, rev match, clutch in, gear engaged. The metal gears mesh with a heavy clunk. The truck crawls forward in low gear. The front wheels hit the ramp of the ridge. The cab pitches upward, staring at the sky for a moment before slamming down as the wheels cross the crest. The chassis twists. The sound of stressing metal echoes through the frame. A groan of steel rivets and cross members flexing against the cold. Crossing the ridge is a moment of vulnerability. The ice here is stressed, fractured. The weight of the truck is concentrated on a small, uneven area. The driver holds his breath, an unconscious reaction. He listens for the sound of the crack, the sharp report that signals a structural failure. But there is only the crunch of tires on broken ice, the squeal of the suspension springs, and the deep thrum of the engine. The rear wheels climb the ridge. The cargo bed tilts, the heavy crates shifting imperceptibly against their lashings. Then the rear wheels descend and the truck is back on the flat sheet. The breath is released. The gear is shifted up. The drone resumes. The silence of the lake is not an absence of sound, but a specific quality of sound. It is a dampening field. The noise of the convoy does not travel far. It is absorbed by the snow and the vastness. If one were to stand 100 yards away, the trucks would sound like distant whispering giants. Inside the cab, the noise is internal, a closed loop of mechanical exertion. The driver's ears ring with the constant frequency of the diesel engine. It creates a sort of auditory tunnel vision, where only the sounds of the truck are real, and the world outside is mute. The temperature gauge on the dashboard has dropped. The needle sits just above the cold peg. The radiator is covered with a canvas winter front, a mask with a small opening to restrict airflow. But even with this, the engine struggles to maintain operating heat. The oil pressure is high, the fluid thick and resistant. The heater output has noticeably cooled. The driver pulls his left hand out of his mitten to adjust the vent. His fingers are pale, the nails slightly blue in the gauge light. The skin feels dry and papery. He touches the metal of the dashboard lever and pulls his hand back quickly. It is biting cold. He puts the mitten back on, the wool feeling rough and comforting. On the passenger side window, the frost has conquered the glass. It is no longer just a rim. It is a thick, opaque curtain of white dendrites. They are beautiful, intricate patterns of ferns and feathers, growing layer upon layer. They block the view completely. The driver is now blind on one side, hemmed in by the ice he is traversing. He can only see forward, through the semicircle cleared by the defroster. This narrowing of vision enhances the hypnotic state. There is only the tunnel of light, the back of the truck ahead, and the endless, scrolling road. The exhaust smoke from the truck ahead stays low to the ground. In the extreme cold, the hot vapor does not rise. It cools instantly and hangs heavy, trailing behind the vehicle like a gray tail. It mixes with the snow dust kicked up by the wheels. The driver drives through this fog. It smells of burnt hydrocarbons, a sharp, acrid scent that penetrates the cabin filters. It is the smell of the supply run, the olfactory signature of the mission. It coats the back of the throat with a metallic taste. Minutes stretch into hours. The concept of time becomes fluid. The odometer clicks over slowly, the only objective measurement of progress. 45 miles, 46 miles, 47 miles. Each mile is identical to the last. The same darkness, the same ice, the same vibration. The mind detaches from the linear progression of time and enters a cyclical state. The routine of checking the mirrors, checking the gauges, correcting the steering becomes a loop. The driver is a machine component, performing a function within the larger system. The vibration of the steering wheel numbs the hands. The driver has to consciously flex his fingers inside the mittens to ensure they still work. The vibration travels up the arms into the shoulders, creating a knot of tension at the base of the neck. He rolls his head from side to side, his neck cracking audibly. The sound is loud in the quiet cab. He shifts his weight on the seat. The seat is a sprung bench, worn and sagging, offering little support. The springs squeak with every bump, a counter-rhythm to the engine. Small details in the cab become monumental. A screw on the dashboard is loose, vibrating in its hole. It rotates slowly, turning a fraction of a degree every few minutes. The driver watches it. It is a focal point, a tiny drama of mechanics. Will it fall out? Will it stay? It buzzes like a trapped fly. A piece of paper, a shipping manifest, is tucked into the sun visor. It is yellowed and curled at the edges. It flutters slightly in the draft from the heater. The text on it is illegible in the dark, just rows of typed black block letters. These small, static objects are the driver's only companions. Outside, the wind shifts again. It is now a tailwind blowing in the same direction as the convoy. This changes the dynamic. The snow dust from the truck ahead is no longer blown to the side. It is carried forward, enveloping the driver's windshield in a constant, swirling cloud. Visibility drops. The red taillights ahead become blurry diffusions of crimson, spreading out into the fog. The driver leans forward, pressing his chest against the steering wheel, squinting to see the definition of the road. The world becomes softer, fuzzier, more dreamlike. The edges of the drawing are smudged with a blender, the sharp lines of the ice lost in a haze of charcoal dust. The headlights catch a glint of something to the side, a marker, a black flag on a bamboo pole frozen stiff sticking out of a snowbank. It marks a hazard, perhaps a thin spot or an old hole. It stands like a sentinel, lonely and rigid. It passes in an instant, but its image lingers on the retina. A solitary soldier in the war against the cold. The bamboo is split and pale, the flag a tattered square of black fabric that does not wave. It is a statue of warning. The cold begins to affect the grease in the wheel bearings of the truck. The resistance increases. The truck feels sluggish, as if it is dragging an anchor. The driver has to press the accelerator slightly harder to maintain the same speed. The fuel gauge needle dips perceptibly. The consumption is high. The engine is working hard just to overcome the friction of the frozen lubricants. The mechanics of the truck are fighting a molecular battle against the temperature. Every moving part is coated in oil that wants to be a solid. The sheer force of the engine shears the oil, forcing it to flow, but it protests. Deep in the darkness, far beyond the reach of the lights, a wolf howls. Or perhaps it is the wind whistling through a crack in the ice. Or perhaps it is a phantom sound created by the auditory cortex to fill the silence. The driver does not react. If it is a wolf, it is miles away, a ghost on the shore. If it is the wind, it is just the weather. If it is his mind, it is normal. Hallucinations of sound are common on the deep ice. Men hear sirens, church bells, voices. They learn to ignore them. They trust only the engine pitch and the crunch of the tires. The accumulation of snow on the windshield wipers forms heavy, white eyebrows. The rubber blades are encased in ice. They no longer wipe clean. They smear the moisture across the glass, creating streaks that refract the light of the oncoming snow. The driver reaches for the knob to turn them off. They are useless now. Better to let the snow blow over the dry glass than to smear it into a blinding paste. The stillness of the wiper blades adds to the static feeling of the scene. The motion is gone from the immediate foreground, leaving only the rushing tunnel of the night. The visual style of the scene deepens in contrast. The blacks become absolute voids. The illuminated areas are stark, bleached of color by the intensity of the headlights against the white snow. The vintage paper texture of the world seems to coarsen. The shadows cast by the dashboard dials are long and sharp. The green light of the instrument cluster reflects in the driver's eyes, giving him a glassy, robotic stare. He blinks slowly. The eyelids feel like heavy shutters made of lead. A thermos of coffee sits on the engine cover, a raised metal hump between the seats. The metal is cold, sucking the heat out of the thermos. The driver knows he should drink, but the effort to unscrew the cap seems monumental. His hands are comfortable on the wheel. To move them is to break the seal of warmth he has created. He decides to wait. Waiting is the primary action of the journey. Waiting for the next mile, waiting for the sunrise that is hours away, waiting for the other side. The truck hits a harmonic frequency. Everything vibrates in unison. The mirrors, the dash, the floor, the driver's teeth. It is a deep, resonant shudder that feels like the truck is shivering. It lasts for 10 seconds, a wave of intense physical feedback, and then fades as the speed or the ice texture changes slightly. It leaves a tingling sensation in the fingertips and toes. It is a reminder of the energy contained in the machine, the violence of the combustion contained within the iron block of the engine. The ice below is 4 feet thick here. The water is deeper. The color of the ice in the headlight beams shifts from blue to black. This is black ice, clear and terrifyingly pure. It offers a view into the abyss if one dared to stop and look with a light. But at speed, it is just a dark, mirror-like surface that swallows the light. The reflection of the truck in the ice is perfect, an inverted doppelganger traveling upside down in the underworld. The tires meet their reflections at the contact patch, 2 dark circles touching, grinding against each other. The driver shifts his gaze to the side mirror. He sees the headlights of the truck behind him. They are 2 starbursts in the dark, flaring with lens flare effects typical of vintage photography or drawing. They are steady. The convoy is intact. The link is unbroken. Seeing the follower is a comfort. It means he is not the last man on Earth. There is a rear guard. The chain of supply stretches out, a fragile line of humanity imposing its will on the wilderness. The cold penetrates the floor mats. The rubber becomes hard as wood. The heels of the driver's boots rest on a surface that feels like a block of ice. The cold creeps up the ankles, past the wool socks, seeking the shin bone. It is an ache, a dull, throbbing presence that lives in the marrow. The driver stamps his left foot, a dull thud on the floorboard. He does it again. Thud, thud. It is a primitive drumbeat to prove he is still alive. The sound is deadened, flat. The air intake snorkel on the side of the truck hisses. It is sucking in the freezing air, mixing it with fuel and exploding it. The cycle repeats thousands of times a minute. Intake, compression, combustion, exhaust, the heart of the beast. The driver listens to the hiss. It is a sharp, sibilant sound distinct from the exhaust drone. It sounds like a snake or a leak. He checks the vacuum gauge. It is normal. The breathing is healthy. The machine endures. The convoy enters a section of rubble ice. This is an area where the ice broke up earlier in the season and refroze in a chaotic field of boulders and slabs. It has been graded, but it remains rough. The truck begins to rock violently. Left, right, left, right. The driver is thrown against the door, then toward the center. He grips the wheel to stabilize himself. The headlights sweep across the horizon, illuminating the darkness in wild, swinging arcs. The shadows of the ice blocks dance and lengthen, jumping across the snow like frantic spirits. The cargo groans. The springs creak. It is a mile of turbulence. The driver slows down further. The speedometer drops to 10 miles per hour. The crawl becomes a stumble. The truck climbs over a lump of ice, drops down, climbs another. It is like driving over a field of frozen rocks. The noise is deafening, the banging of the chassis, the clattering of the chains, the groaning of the trailer coupling. The smooth hypnosis is broken, replaced by a jarring physical struggle. The driver's muscles tense. He fights the wheel, which kicks back with every impact. This is the work. This is the price of the crossing. Finally, the rubble field ends. The transition is sudden. One moment the truck is bucking, the next the tires hum onto a flat sheet of snow-covered ice. The silence rushes back in, more profound than before. The rocking stops. The lights steady. The driver exhales, a long, visible plume of breath that hits the dashboard and curls upward. He relaxes his grip. The numbness returns to the fingers. The drone resumes its steady pitch. The interruption is over. The endless flat returns. The darkness seems to have mass. It feels heavy on the roof of the cab. The driver imagines the weight of the night pressing down on the metal, trying to crush the small pocket of air. The headlights push the darkness back, but it flows around the beams, closing in behind the truck instantly. The light is a plow, clearing a temporary path through the solid wall of night. The path closes as soon as it is made. A small leak in the window seal begins to whistle. It is a high, thin note, piercing and constant. It is the sound of the pressure differential, the warm air trying to get out, the cold air trying to get in. The driver takes a rag from the dash and stuffs it into the corner of the window frame. The whistle stops, replaced by the muffled sound of the wind. The rag is dark with grease and old oil. It freezes into place within minutes, stiffening into a plug. A small victory of improvisation. The miles tick by. 50, 51, 52. The convoy is deep in the heart of the lake now. The point of no return has been passed long ago. To turn back would be as difficult as to go on. There is only forward. The destination is an abstract concept, a dot on a map in a warm office somewhere. Here there is only the process, the rotation of the tires, the flow of the fuel, the endurance of the man. The ice waits, patient and eternal beneath the wheels. The drawing continues, a slow accumulation of dark lines and heavy shadows, capturing the somber, quiet persistence of the supply run. The air outside undergoes a transformation. It ceases to be merely empty space and solidifies into a suspension of microscopic crystals. This is not snow falling from the clouds. It is the moisture in the atmosphere freezing instantly upon contact with the open void. It is ice fog, a dense, glittering mist that hangs just above the surface of the lake. In the beams of the headlights, it appears as a shimmering curtain of diamond dust, millions of tiny facets catching the yellow light and scattering it into a diffuse, glowing haze. The distinct beams of the lamps are lost, replaced by a soft, radiant bloom that pushes against the windshield. The world ahead is no longer a tunnel of clarity but a wall of luminous, opaque white, fading into the deep blue-gray of the surrounding night. From a visual perspective, the drawing style shifts. The sharp, heavy lines of the charcoal are smudged with a blender, softening the edges of the trucks and the ice. The light becomes the dominant medium, a pastel smear of cream and amber that bleeds into the dark background. The contrast lowers. The shadows lose their definition, becoming vague pools of darkness rather than sharp silhouettes. The driver feels as though he is navigating through a cloud, floating in a nebulous space where gravity and direction are suggestions rather than laws. The speed of the convoy drops instinctively. The red taillights of the truck ahead expand into large, fuzzy orbs of crimson, haloed by the ice crystals. They look like dying suns in a nebula. The driver squints, trying to find the center of the light, the hard point of reality within the glow. The distance is harder to judge. Is the truck 50 feet away or 100? The depth perception is erased by the fog. The only reference is the size of the red blur. If it grows, he lifts his foot. If it shrinks, he presses down. The dance continues, but the tempo has slowed to a funereal crawl. The sound of the convoy is dampened even further by the fog. The air is thick, absorbing the high frequencies of the chains and the turbochargers. The drone of the engine becomes deeper, a muffled throb that resonates in the skull. It is a womb-like sensation, being encased in this glowing, humming bubble. The isolation is absolute. The rest of the world, the shore, the depot, the destination, feels like a memory from a different life. There is only the here and the now, the immediate friction of tires on ice and the wall of white dust. The ice beneath the fog begins to sing. It is a phenomenon known to the veteran drivers, a sonic property of the deep lake under extreme tension. As the heavy trucks press down on the frozen sheet, the ice flexes. The tension waves travel outward, vibrating the crystal lattice. The result is a sound that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It is a high-pitched, resonant hum, like the sound of a wet finger tracing the rim of a crystal glass, but amplified to the scale of a landscape. It rises and falls in pitch, a mournful, electronic wail that cuts through the mechanical noise of the truck. To the driver, the song of the ice is a physical sensation. He feels it in his teeth. It sets his nerves on edge. It is the voice of the danger he is riding upon. It reminds him that the road is not a static object, but a dynamic, living membrane stretched over the abyss. The sound harmonizes with the whine of the transmission, creating a dissonance that is unsettling. He turns the radio volume knob, but there is nothing but static. The radio waves cannot penetrate the interference of the northern lights and the atmospheric density. He turns it off again. The singing continues, a siren song from the deep. Inside the cab, the frost on the windows thickens. The ice fog outside seeks to bond with the frost inside. The clear patch on the windshield shrinks. The driver leans forward, his forehead almost touching the glass, peering through the portal. His breath creates a temporary fog on the inside of the glass, which he wipes away with the back of his glove. The leather of the glove leaves a smear on the glass, a streak of oil and dirt that refracts the light. He wipes it again with the rag, harder this time. The rag is stiff, frozen into a crumpled shape. It scratches the frost with a dry, rasping sound. The dashboard lights seem to dim as the eyes fatigue. The green phosphorescence of the gauges wavers. The numbers dance slightly. 1500 RPM, 140 degrees, 40 psi. The data points are abstract. The driver stares at the oil pressure gauge. The needle is steady, but he imagines it twitching. Paranoia is a side effect of the sensory deprivation. Is the engine losing pressure? Is the oil turning to sludge? He taps the glass face of the gauge with a fingernail. Tink, tink. The needle does not move. It is real. The machine is holding. The cold has found a way in through the floorboards. The heat from the engine transmission tunnel is battling the freezing air rising from the ice. The driver's feet are the battleground. His toes are numb, encased in 2 pairs of wool socks and heavy felt-lined boots, yet the cold penetrates. It is a deep, aching cold that feels like it is turning the bones to glass. He wiggles his toes, a conscious effort to keep the circulation moving. The movement is sluggish. He cannot feel the individual toes, just a block of sensation at the end of his leg. He reaches for the thermos again. This time the need for warmth outweighs the inertia. He unscrews the cap with one hand, holding the steering wheel with his knees. The cap is tight, frozen by the ambient temperature. He applies force, his wrist straining. It gives with a crack of breaking ice seals. He pours a small amount of coffee into the cup. The liquid is dark, steaming heavily in the cold air of the cab. The smell of the coffee fills the small space. Roasted beans, slightly burnt, a rich, organic aroma that overpowers the diesel fumes for a moment. He takes a sip. The coffee is lukewarm now, but it feels scalding against his chilled lips. It flows down his throat, a line of heat that radiates outward into his chest. It is a momentary reprieve, a small injection of life. He holds the cup in both hands, letting the warmth seep into his palms through the plastic. The vibration of the truck creates ripples in the black liquid concentric circles of standing waves. He watches the ripples. They are mesmerizing, a tiny visualization of the energy that surrounds him. The fog outside swirls. Vortices of mist peel off the corners of the hood, spiraling into the dark. The light from the headlights catches these swirls, illuminating the turbulence of the air. It looks like milk being poured into water, slow-motion eddies of white against the black. The visual texture is soft, fibrous. The vintage drawing style here would use a blending stump to rub the pastel into the paper, creating a smoky, ethereal effect. The hard lines of the truck are the only solid things in a world of vapor. A shadow passes through the fog to the left. It is a shape darker than the mist, moving parallel to the convoy. The driver tenses. Is it another vehicle, a hallucination, a beast? He watches it. It moves with a loping gait. It is a wolf or a pack of them running on the ice. They are silent, ghostly figures, gray shadows on a gray background. They do not look at the truck. They are running with a purpose, heading somewhere in the vastness. Then they vanish, swallowed by the mist as if they never existed. The driver blinks. Was it real? It doesn't matter, they are gone. The solitude returns. The road surface becomes smoother if that is possible. The friction is almost zero. The truck wanders in the lane, drifting imperceptibly to the left, then the right. The driver makes micro-corrections, turning the wheel no more than an inch. The steering box has a bit of play in it, a dead zone in the center where the wheel turns but the tires do not respond. He saws the wheel gently back and forth through this dead zone, feeling for the engagement point. It is a constant tactile search for control. The monotony of the engine pitch is broken by the sudden engagement of the cooling fan. The thermal clutch, sensing a rise in radiator temperature due to the slow speed and tailwind, locks the fan blades to the engine pulley. The sound changes instantly to a loud, rushing roar of air. Whoosh! It sounds like a jet engine starting up. The sudden noise is startling in the quiet. It drowns out the singing ice, the wind, and the thoughts. It is a brute force mechanical sound. The temperature needle drops slightly. After a minute, the clutch disengages, and the roar fades back to the steady drone. The silence that follows feels deeper than before. The driver's seat is a torture device. The foam padding has long since collapsed, leaving him sitting on the metal springs covered by a thin layer of vinyl. The vinyl is cold and hard. It does not breathe. The driver shifts his weight to the left cheek, then the right. His lower back is a knot of dull pain. He arches his back, pressing against the seat frame, trying to stretch the spine. A pop echoes in his inner ear. The relief is fleeting. The vibration of the truck ensures that no position is comfortable for long. The body is slowly being shaken into a state of rigid fatigue. Outside, the ice fog begins to lift slightly, or perhaps the convoy is driving out of the pocket. The curtain thins. The beams of the headlights extend further, cutting through the mist to reveal the ice again. The red lights ahead sharpen, their halos dissolving. The world regains its hard edges. The charcoal lines of the drawing become distinct again. The relief is palpable. To see clearly is to feel in control. But with the clarity comes the realization of the vastness. The fog hid the emptiness. Now it is revealed again. The horizon is a flat line where the dark ice meets the dark sky. There is nothing to break the view. No trees, no mountains, no lights, just the plain of the lake. It is a landscape of minimalism, reduced to the absolute basics of geometry. Plane, line, point. The truck is the point moving along the line on the plane. The driver checks his watch, lifting his arm to catch the dash light. The crystal is scratched, the leather strap worn. 5:20. He has been driving for hours. The sun will not rise for a long time. In this latitude, at this time of year, the sun is a rumor. It might make a brief appearance as a pale smear on the southern horizon, barely lifting above the edge of the world before sinking back down. For now, it is deep night. The concept of morning is irrelevant. There is only the shift. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out a small tin of mints. The tin is cold metal. He struggles to open it with his mittens, eventually using his teeth to pry the lid. He tips a mint into his mouth. It tastes of peppermint and sugar, a sharp chemical sweetness that cuts through the stale taste of the cab. He sucks on it, focusing on the flavor. It is a sensory anchor, a small pleasure. He places the tin on the dash. It rattles against the plastic, a tiny metallic chatter. The truck hits a succession of small snow drifts. Thump, thump, thump. The steering wheel jerks. The snow explodes outward in puffs of white powder illuminated by the lights. It looks like the truck is plowing through clouds. The resistance slows the vehicle. The driver feeds more fuel. The engine growls a deeper, richer note as the torque increases. The black smoke from the stack thickens, trailing behind like a darker shadow. The truck muscles through the drifts, its weight crushing the snow into ice. Reflections appear on the windshield, not the outside world but the inside. The driver sees his own face reflected in the glass, a ghostly, transparent visage superimposed over the ice. He looks old in the reflection. His eyes are dark hollows, his skin pale and drawn. The scarf covers his mouth. He looks like a stranger, a spirit haunting the machine. He stares at himself for a moment, locking eyes with his reflection. Who is this man? A spectral driver on a spectral road. He looks away, back to the red lights. The convoy approaches a working crack. This is a fracture in the ice that opens and closes with the currents and temperature. A bridging crew has been here. They have laid down heavy timber mats, thick planks of oak bolted together across the fissure. The mats sit on the ice, black rectangles against the blue. The truck ahead slows to a crawl. The wheels roll onto the timber. The sound changes to a hollow, wooden rumble. The timber flexes under the weight. Water, black and oily, bubbles up between the planks, squeezed out by the pressure. It freezes almost instantly on the surface, creating a slick glaze. The driver approaches the bridge. He lines up his tires with the mats. Precision is key. To slip off the timber is to drop a wheel into the crack. He holds the wheel steady, his arms locked. The front tires hit the wood. Rumble, rumble, the cab shakes. He looks down through the side window. He can see the dark water surging in the gap just inches from his tires. It is alive, liquid, and deadly. It is the only liquid thing for 100 miles. It looks hungry. The rear wheels follow. The trailer groans. The timber mats bow, dipping into the slush. Then the truck is across. The tires hit the solid ice again with a firm slap. The tension releases. The driver exhales a breath he didn't realize he was holding. That was a choke point, a moment of calculated risk. Now he is on the other side of the crack on a new plate of ice. The journey continues. The heater fan begins to squeal. It is a high-pitched metal-on-metal screech. The bearing is failing. It cuts through the cabin, sharp and irritating. The driver hits the dashboard with his gloved fist. Whack. The squeal stops, replaced by the familiar rattle, percussive maintenance. It is a temporary fix, but it works. The silence of the fan feels like a luxury now. The environment of the truck is degrading slowly. Every mile takes a toll on the components. The truck is aging in real time. Far in the distance, a light flares up. It is a flare shot from the ground. A bright red star rises into the sky, hangs for a moment, drifting on the wind, and then burns out, falling back into the dark. It is a signal from the scout team miles ahead. A warning, a marker, a sign of life. It is too far to tell. It is just a momentary punctuation mark in the sentence of the night. It leaves a red afterimage in the driver's vision, a floating spot of color that slowly fades to green and then black. The driver's left leg has gone to sleep. The vibration has numbed the nerves. He lifts his foot and stomps it on the floor. He cannot feel the impact, only the thud reverberating through the boot. He massages his thigh with his left hand, trying to wake the dormant muscle. Pins and needles begin to prickle, a rush of uncomfortable sensation. It is painful but welcome. Pain means life. Pain means the nerves are still connected. The visual field is dominated by the texture of the snow on the ice. It is not smooth anymore. It is wind-scoured into sastrugi, hard, wave-like ridges of snow that run parallel to the wind. They look like a frozen sea. The headlights cast long, sharp shadows behind each ridge, creating a pattern of zebra stripes on the ground. The truck bumps over them. Chatter, chatter, chatter. The suspension works overtime. The lights flicker with the vibration. The world is shaking. A sudden draft of cold air hits the back of the driver's neck. The curtain separating the sleeper berth from the cab has swung open. The air in the sleeper is colder, stagnant. It spills into the cab like water. The driver reaches back blindly and yanks the curtain closed. The fabric is heavy, stiff wool. It creates a seal of sorts. He shivers. The involuntary spasm runs down his spine. The cold is an active enemy, always probing for a weakness, always finding a way in. The truck engine misses a beat, just one. A momentary hesitation in the combustion cycle, a hiccup. The driver's heart stops for that same split second. He waits. The engine catches, resumes its rhythm. Drone, drone, drone. Was it a fuel line freezing? A piece of dirt in the injector? It doesn't happen again. But the seed of doubt is planted. The machine is fallible. The driver listens with renewed intensity, dissecting the sound of the engine, searching for the anomaly. The solitude is heavy. There is no radio chatter. The other drivers are silent, wrapped in their own cocoons. The driver feels a profound sense of aloneness. He is the captain of a small vessel in a dark ocean. He talks to himself, a whisper that is lost in the noise. Easy now, steady, keep her rolling. The sound of his own voice is strange, foreign. It breaks the spell of the silence for a second, then is swallowed up. The drawing of the scene is now one of endurance. The lines are heavy, deeply etched into the paper. The darkness is a physical weight. The truck is a small, stubborn shape pushing against the grain of the paper, against the cold, against the night. The yellow lights are the only hope, the only warmth. They carve the path, second by second, inch by inch. The ice stretches on, limitless, indifferent. The supply run is a test of patience, a slow war against the elements. The driver settles back into the seat, ignoring the pain, ignoring the cold. He becomes part of the truck. He is the steering mechanism. He is the throttle control. He is the eye that sees in the dark. The center of the lake is a place where geography dissolves into pure abstraction. Here, 50 miles from any solid land, the concept of location becomes irrelevant. There are no landmarks, no rising hills, no tree lines to demarcate the horizon. There is only the planar geometry of the ice sheet and the hemispherical dome of the night sky. The convoy moves through this void like a slow pulse of electricity through a dark, dead wire. The sense of forward motion is maintained only by the relentless vibration of the machinery and the scrolling texture of the snow in the headlight beams. If the lights were to be extinguished, the sensation of movement would vanish entirely, replaced by a feeling of suspension in a bath of black ink. The visual composition of this moment is one of profound minimalism. In the vintage pastel style, the paper is saturated with the heaviest application of indigo and charcoal. The world is reduced to layers of shadow. The trucks are not distinct objects, but rather conglomerations of darker shapes against the dark background, defined only by the faint, warm rim lighting from their own running lights. The yellow beams of the headlights are the only assertive strokes of color, thick bands of ochre and cream that cut across the bottom of the frame, revealing the microscopic details of the frozen surface before fading into the overwhelming blue. Inside the cab, the driver initiates a mechanical ritual. The fuel gauge for the primary tank is hovering near the empty mark. The needle, a thin sliver of orange plastic, vibrates against the stop pin. It is time to switch tanks. This is a procedure that must be done by feel, without taking eyes off the road. The driver's right hand leaves the warmth of the steering wheel and drops into the darkness between the seats. He fumbles for the selector valve, a brass lever cold enough to burn skin. He finds it, the metal greasy and stiff. He grips it with his mitten. It resists. The valve is frozen, the grease within it turned to wax. He applies pressure, gritting his teeth, feeling the resistance in his shoulder. With a sudden, stiff clunk, the lever moves. He switches from right to left. The engine note falters for a heartbeat as the fuel lines switch over. There is a terrifying second of silence where the combustion threatens to cease. The air intake hisses loudly, sucking at the empty line. Then the fresh diesel from the full left tank hits the injectors. The engine catches with a renewed roar, a surge of power that shudders through the frame. The needle on the fuel gauge swings slowly, agonizingly, all the way to the right, signaling full. The driver exhales. The lifeline is secured for another 6 hours. The smell of raw diesel momentarily grows stronger in the cab, a phantom scent released by the switch, before being scrubbed away by the heater. The ice here is different. It is old ice formed early in the season and thickened by months of crushing cold. It is dark, almost black, and possesses a clarity that is unsettling. The snow cover is thin, swept away by the relentless winds of the open expanse. The headlights illuminate the depth of the ice. It is not a solid white sheet. It is a translucent block filled with suspended bubbles of air, frozen weeds, and the faint, ghostly lines of thermal fractures. To look down at the road is to look into a deep, frozen aquarium. The tires roll over this surface with a smooth, hissing sound, different from the crunch of snow. It is the sound of rubber on glass. The wind has died down. The storm that plagued the earlier miles has exhausted itself, leaving behind a silence that is heavy and absolute. The absence of wind noise reveals the full symphony of the truck's mechanical complaints. The driver hears the rhythmic click-click-click of a tappet in the engine, the whine of the differential gears, the creaking of the wooden cargo stakes. He hears the suspension groaning as the chassis flexes over invisible undulations in the ice. These sounds are magnified in the stillness. They become a language, a constant status report delivered by the machine to its operator. Above, the clouds begin to break. It is a slow, tectonic shifting of the sky. The heavy, matte lid of gray dissolves, revealing patches of the true night sky, and with the clearing comes the cold. Without the cloud cover to act as a blanket, the heat of the earth radiates out into space, and the temperature plummets. The driver watches the thermometer. It drops from -30 to -35, then -40. At -40, the scales of Celsius and Fahrenheit meet, a mathematical singularity of freezing. The air inside the cab seems to crystallize. The breath of the driver turns into a fine, persistent powder that coats the dashboard, the steering wheel, and the collar of his coat. Through the gaps in the clouds, the stars appear. They are not the soft, twinkling stars of the temperate south. They are hard, brilliant points of ice-white light, sharp and unblinking. They look like holes punched in the black paper of the sky, letting through a blinding, cold light from the other side of the universe. The constellations are tilted, rotated by the high latitude. The North Star is high overhead, a fixed pivot point around which the heavens slowly rotate. The Milky Way is a faint, spilled smear of diamond dust, a ghostly river running parallel to the ice road. The driver glances up. The beauty is undeniable, but it is a hostile beauty. The stars offer no warmth, only a reminder of the infinite vacuum that lies just above the atmosphere. The convoy slows slightly to accommodate the changing temperature. The tires become harder, losing their pliability. They feel like stone wheels rolling on a stone road. The ride becomes harsher. Every vibration is transmitted directly to the spine. The driver shifts in his seat, trying to find a patch of cushion that hasn't been compressed into a brick. There is none. He is sitting on a frame of steel and frozen foam. He resigns himself to the discomfort, accepting it as the baseline condition of his existence. The heater fan is now running at full speed, but the air coming out of the vents is barely lukewarm. The engine cannot generate enough heat to combat the ambient cold. The driver pulls a heavy wool blanket from behind the seat and drapes it over his legs, tucking the ends under his thighs. The wool is scratchy and smells of dust and old oil, but it traps a layer of body heat. He creates a microclimate from the waist down. His upper body, encased in the shearling coat, remains exposed to the chill of the cab. In the rearview mirror, the headlights of the truck behind are crisp and star-like in the clear air. There is no fog to diffuse them. They are two piercing eyes, unwavering in their gaze. The driver finds comfort in them. They are the only proof that he is not hallucinating the entire journey. He flashes his clearance lights, a quick blink of the switch. A second later, the truck behind flashes back. Blink, a silent conversation. I am here. I am here too. The connection is re-established. The chain holds. The hunger begins to set in. It is a dull, gnawing sensation in the stomach, a biological alarm clock ringing in the silence. The driver reaches for a metal lunchbox wedged between the seats. It is cold to the touch. He opens the latch with a snap that echoes loudly. Inside, there is a sandwich wrapped in wax paper. The bread is frozen stiff. The meat inside is a hard slab. He unwraps it one-handed, the paper crinkling loudly. He takes a bite. It is like eating a block of wood. He has to hold the food in his mouth, letting his body heat thaw it before he can chew. The taste is muted by the cold, plain bread, salty meat, the sharp bite of frozen mustard. He eats slowly, mechanically, fueling the biological engine just as he fueled the diesel one. Ahead, a dark shape emerges from the gloom of the ice. It is stationary. The driver tenses, his foot hovering over the brake pedal. As he draws closer, the shape resolves into an old, abandoned sled. It is a relic of a past failure, a wooden sledge left behind when a tractor broke down or the ice became too rough. It sits forlornly on the side of the plowed track, half buried in a snowdrift. The wood is gray and weathered, scoured by years of wind. It looks like the skeleton of a prehistoric beast. The convoy passes it slowly. The headlights sweep over its ribs, casting long, moving shadows that make it seem to twist and turn. Then it is gone, left behind in the red wash of the taillights, a ghost of the road. The visual texture of the scene emphasizes the isolation. The drawing would show the truck as a small, detailed object in the center of a vast, empty page. The negative space is overwhelming. The artist would use broad, sweeping strokes of dark pastel to create the sky and the ice, blending them until the horizon line disappears. The truck is a fortress of intricate lines. The grill, the rivets, the chains, battling against the shapeless void. The driver's mind begins to wander, untethered by the lack of visual stimuli. He thinks of the cargo in the back, crates of mining equipment, barrels of fuel, sacks of flour. He doesn't actually know. The manifest is just a list of numbers, but he imagines the weight. He visualizes the crates sitting in the dark, cold cargo bed, freezing slowly. He wonders if the metal parts are shrinking, if the flour is hardening. The cargo feels like a burden, a dead weight that holds him back, yet it is the only reason he is here. The purpose of the mission is abstract. The weight is real. The radio crackles again. This time, a voice cuts through the static, faint and distant. Convoy Leader 2, break, watch for, overflow, mile 60. The transmission is fragmented, eaten by the atmospheric interference. The driver strains to hear, leaning his ear toward the speaker. Overflow. The word triggers a spike of adrenaline. Overflow is water that has seeped up through cracks and flooded the surface of the ice, hidden under a thin layer of snow. It is a trap. If the truck hits it, the slush can freeze instantly around the wheels, trapping the vehicle, or the water can hide a weak spot where the ice has failed. He scans the road ahead with renewed intensity. The ice looks uniform, dark, shiny, streaked with white wind-blown snow. Where is the overflow? He watches the texture. Overflow looks different. It looks matte, like wet concrete, or it has a slight discoloration, a yellow or gray tint against the blue. He sees a patch ahead that looks darker, less reflective. Is that it? He slows down. The truck engine drops in pitch. He guides the left wheels onto the snow ridge at the edge of the road, seeking better traction. The right wheels stay on the ice. He approaches the dark patch. Tires hit it. There is a splashing sound, a slushy shhhshhhshhh. Water sprays up into the wheel wells, freezing instantly on impact with the metal. It is overflow but shallow. The truck pushes through. The resistance increases. The slush grabs at the tires, trying to slow them down. The driver keeps the throttle steady. Do not stop. Never stop in overflow. The momentum carries the heavy machine forward. The splash turns back into a crunch as the tires find solid ice again. He is through. He checks the mirror. The truck behind hits the same patch. A spray of dark water kicks up, illuminated by its headlights. It slews slightly sideways, then straightens. They are all through. The cold has now penetrated the gloves. The driver's fingertips are numb. He withdraws one hand from the mitt, making a fist inside the palm of the glove, blowing warm air from his lungs down into the cuff. The sensation of his own breath is the only true warmth he has felt in hours. He switches hands, steering with his knees for a dangerous second. The steering wheel is steady. The ruts in the ice hold the course. He puts the hand back. The leather is freezing. On the dashboard, a small bobblehead figure, a hula dancer or a dog glued there by a previous driver, vibrates frantically. It is a chaotic element in the static cab. In the strobe light effect of passing through the headlight beams of the truck behind, reflecting in the mirrors, the figure seems to dance in slow motion. It is a surreal detail, a piece of kitsch in a landscape of sublime terror. The driver stares at it. It mocks the seriousness of the situation. It is just plastic and a spring, immune to the cold, dancing forever on the road to nowhere. Fatigue is a heavy blanket now. It weighs down the eyelids. The driver's eyes want to close just for a second. The blink rate slows. The eyes stay closed for a fraction of a second longer than necessary. In that moment of darkness, the brain generates images. A warm kitchen, a fire, a bed with heavy quilts. The images are vivid, almost more real than the dark cab. Then the eyes snap open and the blue reality rushes back in. The transition is jarring. The driver shakes his head, a violent motion. "Wake up," he whispers. The sound of his voice is hoarse, unused. He rolls the window down an inch. The noise of the air is like a shriek. The cold that enters is a physical slap to the face. It burns the skin, freezes the moisture in the nose instantly, and makes the eyes water. It is painful but effective. The drowsiness evaporates, replaced by the shock of the freeze. He leaves the window open for 10 seconds, letting the Arctic air scour the cab, replacing the stale warmth with fresh, deadly oxygen. Then he rolls it up. The silence returns, but the air is sharper now, crystalline and pure. The ice road curves gently to the right. It is a long, sweeping arc that follows some invisible contour of the lake depth. The headlights sweep across the darkness, illuminating nothing but more ice. The turning of the wheel is minimal, a steady pressure to the right. The truck leans, the suspension settles, the gravitational forces are subtle. The driver feels the shift in his inner ear. Even in the dark, the body knows it is turning. The compass on the dash swings slowly. NE. They are heading deeper into the northeast, toward the most remote part of the territory. A new sound emerges. A low, rhythmic thumping from the rear. Thump, thump, thump. Is it a flat tire, a loose chain, a piece of ice caught in the duals? The driver listens, analyzing the frequency. It speeds up with the truck. It is periodic. He checks the mirror. The trailer tires are invisible in the dark. He cannot stop to check. Not here, not in the middle of the void. He has to diagnose it by ear. It sounds soft, not metallic. Probably a chunk of snow packed between the tires, breaking up and reforming. He decides to ignore it. If the tire blows, he will know. The truck will lurch. Until then, it is just another instrument in the percussion section of the drive. The dashboard lights cast long shadows of the needles across the gauge faces. It is 6:00 a.m., though there is no sign of dawn. The night is endless. The passage of time feels arbitrary. The driver counts the mile markers that don't exist. He counts the cracks in the ice. He counts the breaths he takes. 1, 2, 3, inhale. 1, 2, 3, exhale. The meditation of survival. The texture of the drawing changes again. The artist uses a sharp, white pencil to draw the frost on the inside of the windshield. The lines are jagged, crystalline, intricate. They frame the view, creating a vignette of ice. The center of the view, the road, is dark and blurry. The focus is on the barrier between the man and the world. The glass is the shield. The frost is the encroaching enemy. Far to the north, a green glow strengthens. The aurora is back, stronger this time. It ripples across the sky in great silent curtains of emerald and violet. It moves with a fluidity that defies the frozen world below. It looks like liquid light being poured over the stars. The reflection of the aurora appears on the black ice, a shimmering mirror image that makes the truck feel like it is driving through the sky. For a moment, the world is upside down. The driver grips the wheel, vertigo washing over him. Which way is up? The ground is a mirror, the sky is a light show. He fixes his eyes on the red lights ahead. They are the only fixed point, the anchor. The truck hits a section of washboard ice, ripples caused by the wind freezing the water as it settled. The vibration is intense. It chatters the teeth. It blurs the vision. The headlights shake violently, creating a strobe effect on the snow. The tools in the door pocket rattle like maracas. The driver slows down, but the vibration finds a new harmonic frequency and continues. There is no escaping it. He has to ride it out. His body becomes loose, absorbing the shocks, moving with the machine rather than fighting it. He is a shock absorber made of flesh and bone. The fuel gauge on the full tank has barely moved. The efficiency of the diesel engine is high at this steady, low load. The machine is happy in its steady state. It is the transitions that break things. The starting, the stopping, the shifting. Here in the continuous cruise, the engine could run forever. It is an industrial heart, beating at 1,500 revolutions per minute, indifferent to the cold, indifferent to the solitude. The driver thinks of the mechanics of the engine, the pistons rising and falling, the valves opening and closing, the oil coating the metal surfaces. It is a comforting visualization, a world of order and precision enclosed in cast iron blocks. It is a counterpoint to the chaos of the weather and the ice. He trusts the iron. He trusts the oil. He trusts the fire inside the cylinders. The convoy pushes on, a line of sparks in the dark, a fragile thread of humanity woven through the tapestry of the winter night. The darkness is vast, but the trucks are stubborn. They do not stop. They do not speed up. They simply continue, rolling on the frozen water, carrying their burden toward a dawn that feels like it will never come. The night has entered its deepest phase, a stretch of time where the concept of morning feels like a myth from a forgotten era. The darkness is no longer a temporary state. It is the permanent condition of the world. The convoy is suspended in a heavy, viscous silence that is broken only by the mechanical labor of the engines. The trucks move through the void like deep-sea submersibles navigating the floor of an ocean that has frozen solid. The pressure of the atmosphere is palpable, a crushing weight of cold air that seeks to compress the steel, the rubber, and the flesh of the men inside. From a high vantage point, the scene is a study in isolation. The vintage drawing would show the vast, unbroken plain of the lake rendered in the darkest shades of indigo and charcoal. The paper would be rough, absorbing the pigment, leaving small flecks of the underlying darkness visible even in the lighter areas. The convoy is a series of minute, warm sparks, the yellow headlights and the red tail lights, moving imperceptibly slowly across the immense canvas. There is no background, no foreground, only the infinite middle ground of the ice. The trucks are not conquering the distance, they are merely enduring it. Inside the cab of the second truck, the driver has entered a state of trance. His eyes are open, fixed on the red rectangular lights of the lead vehicle, but his mind has detached from the immediate sensory input. He is operating on instinct, a biological autopilot that handles the micro-adjustments of the steering wheel and the throttle without conscious thought. The connection between his hands and the front tires is direct and intuitive. He feels the texture of the ice through the vibration of the steering column. He knows when the surface is slick and polished, and when it is covered in the friction of hard-packed snow, simply by the buzzing in his palms. The dashboard instruments are the only reality within the cab. The green light they emit is weak and sickly, casting a ghostly pallor over the driver's gloved hands. The oil pressure gauge is the most critical. The needle sits steady at 60 pounds per square inch. It is a high reading, a testament to the viscosity of the cold oil. The fluid is thick, resisting the pump, coating the bearings in a heavy protective film. The driver glances at it every 30 seconds. It is a ritual. Look at the road. Look at the oil. Look at the road. Look at the temperature. The cycle repeats, a visual loop that marks the passage of seconds. The heater fan continues its monotonous drone. It has become the background noise of existence, a white noise that masks the other, more subtle sounds of the truck. But beneath the fan, if one listens closely, there is the ticking of the clock, the creaking of the dashboard plastic as it contracts, the rhythmic thrum of the diesel injection pump. The cab is a symphony of small, mechanical noises, each one signifying that the machine is still alive, still fighting the entropy of the cold. Outside, the texture of the ice changes again. The convoy enters a zone of plate ice. These are vast, flat sheets of ice that have frozen under calm conditions, resulting in a surface that is as smooth as a mirror. The headlights of the truck reflect perfectly off the black glass, creating a double image of the world. The beams do not just illuminate the road, they plunge into the depths, revealing the dark, clear structure of the frozen water. It is dizzying to look at. The road seems to have vanished, replaced by a dark void that stretches down forever. The truck feels like it is flying, suspended over an abyss. The traction on plate ice is treacherous. The tires, despite their chains and weight, struggle to find purchase. The driver feels the rear of the truck drift slightly to the right, pushed by the camber of the ice or a breath of wind. He does not panic. He does not turn the wheel abruptly. He simply lifts his foot off the accelerator, reducing the torque to the wheels. The truck settles. The drift stops. He gently reapplies the power. It is a delicate negotiation with physics. The coefficient of friction is dangerously low. The only thing keeping the truck on the designated path is the inertia of its own mass and the gentle guidance of the driver. A sound comes from the lake itself, a deep, resonant boom that starts low and rises in pitch, traveling through the ice at the speed of sound in a solid. It sounds like a whale singing in the deep or a steel cable snapping under tension. It is the ice expanding. The temperature has dropped further and the sheet is stressing. The sound vibrates through the tires, up the suspension, and into the seat. The driver feels it in his spine. It is a reminder that the platform he is driving on is not land. It is a floating skin. The lake is alive beneath him, shifting and groaning in its sleep. The driver reaches for the window crank. The glass is frosted over completely on the inside now, a thick layer of white rime that blocks all view except for the small circle cleared by the defroster. He needs to see the mirror. He turns the crank. It is stiff. The grease in the mechanism is frozen. He exerts force. The handle turns with a dry metal-on-metal screech. The window lowers an inch. The air that rushes in is shocking. It is not just cold, it is solid. It hits the skin like a physical blow, a sharp, biting pain that instantly numbs the cheek. He glances into the side mirror. The glass is clear, kept cold by the outside air. He sees the headlights of the truck behind him. They are steady. The red marker lights on the side of his own trailer are visible, glowing dimly in the spray of snow. The tires are rolling. The chains are slapping. Everything is in order. He rolls the window back up immediately. The screech echoes again. The warmth of the cab has been compromised, stripped away in seconds. It will take 10 minutes for the heater to recover the lost ground. The driver shivers, a violent, involuntary spasm that rattles his shoulders. The condensation on the metal roof of the cab has frozen into small droplets of ice. Occasionally, the vibration of the engine shakes one loose. It falls, hitting the driver on the leg or the arm with a tiny, distinct tap. It is like being rained on inside a cave. The interior of the truck is its own weather system, a microclimate of humidity and frost battling for dominance. The smell of the cab is a mix of wet wool, diesel fumes, and the metallic tang of ozone. It is the scent of winter work. Ahead, the lead truck slows down. The brake lights do not come on. Braking is dangerous, but the distance closes. The driver senses the deceleration. He lifts his foot. The convoy is approaching a heave. This is where the ice has been pushed up by water pressure, creating a long, low hump in the road. It is not as jagged as a pressure ridge, but it is deceptive. If hit at speed, it can launch a truck into the air. The convoy slows to a walking pace. The truck climbs the heave. The hood rises, pointing at the stars. The suspension creates a loud, groaning sound as the leaf springs extend to their limit. Then the front wheels crest the top and slam down on the other side. Thud. The heavy steel bumper barely clears the ice. Then the rear wheels climb. The driver is tilted forward, hanging against his seat belt. The cargo in the back shifts, a heavy, sliding sound of wood on wood. The chains rattle violently. Then the rear wheels drop. Thud. The trailer follows, a long, articulate snake climbing over the obstacle. The coupling creaks. The entire vehicle flexes, twisting like a living thing. Once over the heave, the road flattens out again. The driver accelerates slowly, bringing the RPMs back up to the cruising level. The drone resumes. The interruption was brief, but it served to break the hypnosis. The heart rate is elevated. The adrenaline is flowing. The driver is awake again, acutely aware of the fragility of his position. The moon begins to rise. It is not a full moon, but a waning gibbous, a misshapen skull of white rock climbing slowly above the eastern horizon. It does not provide much light, but it changes the color palette of the world. The deep, impenetrable black of the ice turns to a dark, shimmering silver. The shadows cast by the trucks become longer and more defined. The snowdrifts catch the pale light, glowing with a faint, blue luminescence. The vintage drawing style shifts from charcoal to silver point. The contrast becomes sharper. The world looks colder, if that is possible. It looks like a photograph developed in liquid nitrogen. The moonlight reveals the texture of the snow in greater detail. It is not a uniform blanket. It is etched with wind lines, tiny canyons and ridges carved by the air currents. It looks like the surface of a desolate planet. There is no sign of life anywhere. No tracks of animals, no vegetation, no other human presence. Just the geometric perfection of the wind-scoured snow. The convoy is an intruder here, a foreign object moving through a sterile landscape. The driver's hands are cramping. He has been gripping the wheel in the same position for hours. He forces himself to release the left hand, shaking it out. The fingers are stiff, curling into a claw shape. He rubs them against his thigh, trying to generate friction and heat. The sensation of touch is dulled. He feels the rough wool of his trousers, but it feels distant, as if his hand belongs to someone else. He switches hands, gripping the wheel with the left and shaking out the right. It is a necessary maintenance of the body. He reaches for the map light on the ceiling of the cab. He flicks the switch. Nothing happens. The bulb has burned out or the wiring has frozen and cracked. He flicks it again. Click, click, darkness. He curses softly. It is a small failure, but it adds to the sense of isolation. He is now truly in the dark, save for the green dash lights. He cannot read the gauges clearly without leaning in. He cannot see the floor. The darkness inside the cab is now as absolute as the darkness outside. The vibration of the truck creates a standing wave in the coffee cup. The driver looks at it. The dark liquid ripples in a perfect concentric pattern. It is a visual representation of the engine's frequency. He watches the ripples. They are hypnotic. They pulse in time with the thrumming of the diesel. It is a tiny, contained ocean in a cup, reacting to the tectonic forces of the machine. The radio static changes pitch. It goes from a white noise hiss to a lower, rhythmic crackle. It sounds like bacon frying. The atmospheric interference is shifting as the moon rises. The ionosphere is reacting to the solar wind. The driver listens to the static. It is the only music he has. He imagines voices in the noise, snippets of conversation, old songs. It is a common phenomenon, auditory pareidolia. The brain tries to find patterns in the chaos. He hears a woman's voice, a laugh, a snatch of melody. He shakes his head. It is just the sky talking to the ice. The convoy passes a marker pole that has fallen over. It lies flat on the ice, half buried in drift. The reflective tape is invisible until the last second when the headlights catch it at a shallow angle. It flares up like a dying ember and then vanishes. A fallen soldier. It means the road maintenance crew hasn't been out this far in days. The road is deteriorating. The ruts are getting deeper. The edges are getting softer. The driver has to pay more attention to the track. He keeps the wheels in the center of the dark stripes of the old tracks. If he strays too far to the side, into the white snow, he risks hitting soft ice or a hidden crack. The smell of the diesel exhaust changes slightly. It becomes richer, sharper. The wind has shifted again, blowing the plume directly alongside the cab. The smoke is thick and gray, swirling in the moonlight. It obscures the view of the side mirror. The driver is driving in a cloud of his own making. The fumes seep in through the vents. He coughs, a dry, hacking cough that hurts his chest. The cold air has dried out his lungs. He takes a sip of the cold coffee to soothe his throat. It tastes bitter and acidic. The distance between the trucks seems to have increased. The red lights ahead are smaller, fainter. Has the lead driver sped up, or has he slowed down? The loss of depth perception makes it hard to tell. He presses the accelerator slightly. The engine note rises. The truck surges forward, fighting the air resistance. The lights grow slightly larger. He holds the speed. He does not want to get too close, but he does not want to be left behind. The fear of separation is primal. To be alone on the ice is to be dead. The convoy is the organism. The truck is just a cell. The driver shifts his weight on the seat. His legs are heavy, blood pooling in the veins. He lifts his left leg, then his right, marching in place. Thump, thump. The sound is dull. He feels the vibration of the floor through his boots. The floor is freezing. The rubber mat is hard as stone. He can feel the cold radiating up from the transmission tunnel despite the heat of the gearbox. It is a strange sensation, hot metal on one side, freezing steel on the other. A crack appears in the windshield. It starts at the bottom edge near the wiper and shoots upward in a jagged line, stopping halfway up the glass. Snap. The sound is loud, like a pistol shot inside the cab. The driver flinches. He stares at the crack. It is a stress fracture caused by the temperature difference between the defroster and the outside air. It glitters in the dashboard light. It is a new flaw in the view. It divides the world into two halves, left and right. The driver traces the line with his eyes. It is beautiful in a destructive way. It is the signature of the cold. The miles tick by with agonizing slowness. The odometer rolls over. Click. Another mile. Click. Another mile. The numbers are the only proof of motion. Without them, the driver could believe he is stationary, running on a treadmill of ice while the world scrolls past. The scenery does not change. The darkness does not change. Only the numbers change. They are the anchor to linear time. The driver thinks about the ice beneath him, 4 feet thick, maybe 5. It sounds like a lot, but compared to the weight of the truck, it is thin, a sheet of paper holding up a brick. He visualizes the deflection of the ice, the bowl of depression that travels with the truck, the water displaced beneath, the wave of pressure moving ahead of him. He is surfing on a solid wave. If he stops, the bowl deepens. If he stays too long, the ice fails. Movement is safety. Stagnation is danger. The headlights catch a patch of shell ice. This is a thin layer of ice formed over an air pocket, usually where snow has insulated the water. It is brittle. The truck hits it. Crunch. The top layer shatters like glass. The wheels drop a few inches onto the solid ice below. It is a jarring impact, but not a disaster. The sound is like breaking 1,000 windows at once. Shards of ice fly up, sparkling in the beams. The truck shudders and keeps going. The driver's hands tighten on the wheel, then relax. Just shell ice, not a breakthrough. The isolation is deepening. The mind begins to turn inward. The driver replays memories, the layout of his house, the face of his wife, the sound of rain on a tin roof. These memories are vivid Technicolor inserts in the monochromatic world. They are dangerous distractions. He pushes them away. Focus on the red lights. Focus on the black ice. Focus on the needle of the oil gauge. The moon climbs higher. Its light becomes more pervasive. The shadows under the dashboard deepen. The texture of the vintage drawing becomes grainier, the pencil strokes more evident. The light is not warm. It is the color of old bone. It bleaches the color out of the red tail lights ahead, making them look pink and washed out. The world is fading into a grayscale nightmare. The driver notices a vibration in the gear stick. It is shaking more than usual. The knob is blurring. Is the transmission fluid foaming? Is a bearing going? He places his hand on the knob. He feels the gears grinding deep below. It is the heartbeat of the powertrain. It feels rough, angry. The cold is taking its toll. The metal is brittle. The tolerances are wrong. The machine is suffering. He pats the knob gently, a gesture of reassurance. Hold on, old girl, hold on. The wind picks up again, this time from the north, a crosswind. It hits the side of the trailer with a heavy, buffeting force. The truck leans. The driver steers into it. The snow begins to drift across the road again, snaking lines of white powder that hiss as they pass under the tires. The visibility drops. The clear air of the moonrise is being replaced by the blowing snow. The cycle of the weather continues. Clear, fog, snow, wind. The ice road offers no consistency. The driver checks the time. 6:45 a.m., still dark, still night. The dawn is a theoretical concept. He is stuck in the eternal now of the ice run. The fatigue is a physical weight pressing on his shoulders, pulling down his eyelids. He fights it with the routine. Check the mirror, check the gauges, check the road, check the ice. The convoy moves on, a dark worm crawling across a silver plate. The silence of the deep lake surrounds them, a vast, indifferent ocean of cold that waits for a mistake. But the trucks do not make mistakes. They just roll. Slow, heavy, and relentless. The story is not in the destination, but in the grinding rotation of the wheels against the frozen world. The moon has climbed to its zenith, a pale, cratered eye staring down from the absolute apex of the celestial dome. Its light is not the warm, organic glow of the sun, nor the soft amber of the truck's lanterns. It is a cold, clinical silver, a harsh illumination that strips the world of its depth and renders the ice in high-contrast monochrome. The visual landscape has shifted from the deep indigos and charcoals of the earlier night to a stark palette of graphite and bone. The vintage drawing of this moment is etched with a hard, sharp pencil, the lines defining the ridges of snow and the edges of the trucks cutting across the paper with geometric precision. The softness of the pastel fog has evaporated, leaving behind a clarity that is more terrifying than the darkness. In this silver light, the ice lake looks less like a frozen body of water and more like a vast, polished floor of obsidian. The surface is so smooth and so dark that it reflects the constellations with perfect fidelity. The trucks appear to be driving through the sky itself, their wheels churning through the Milky Way, their chassis suspended between the stars above and the stars below. The horizon line is completely erased. There is no seam where the Earth meets the atmosphere. It is a continuous sphere of vacuum, with the convoy traveling along the equatorial belt of the void. The driver of the second truck sits motionless, a statue carved from heavy wool and fatigue. The silence inside the cab has deepened, if such a thing is possible. The heater fan, previously a roar, has settled into a background frequency that the brain no longer registers as sound, but rather as a texture of the air. The only audible noise is the interaction between the tires and the ice. It is a high-pitched singing, a frictionless hum that speaks of the dangerous smoothness of the road. The chains, normally a source of clattering noise, are silent on the flat plates, held tight against the rubber by centrifugal force, waiting for the snow that will make them sing again. The cold has solidified the atmosphere inside the cab. It is no longer a gas. It feels like a thin, brittle solid that cracks with every movement. The driver's breath does not cloud the air anymore. The moisture has been freeze-dried out of the environment. His throat is parched, sandpaper dry, but the effort to reach for the water jug feels monumental. He swallows dryly, a clicking sound in his ears. The membranes of his nose are stiff. He blinks, and the eyelids feel heavy, dragging over eyeballs that feel cold to the touch. The boundary between the body and the freezing air is blurring. The cold is not just outside. It is becoming the internal state of the organism. The instrument panel is the only source of warmth in the visual field. The gauges are glowing with a faint, bioluminescent green, a radioactive hue that looks sickly against the silver moonlight outside. The driver focuses on the ammeter. The needle wavers slightly to the negative side. The alternator is working hard, powering the lights, the heater, the engine electronics. The battery is a chemical reservoir of energy that is fighting the thermodynamics of the Arctic. If the engine stops, the battery will die in minutes, frozen into a block of lead and acid. The driver wills the needle to stay in the center. It is a silent psychic battle with the electrical system. The vibration of the truck has changed. On this smooth, hard ice, the suspension settles. The rhythmic bouncing stops, replaced by a fine, high-frequency tremor that buzzes through the frame. It makes the mirrors blur. It makes the driver's teeth ache. It loosens the screws in the dashboard. A small plastic panel on the door rattles incessantly. Bzzzt, bzzzt, bzzzt. It is a frantic, insect-like sound. The driver presses his knee against the door panel. The rattling stops. He holds his leg there, a muscular lock to silence the noise. It is a small exertion, but it brings a moment of auditory peace. Ahead, the red taillights of the lead truck are sharp, distinct squares. In the clear air, they do not bloom. They are hard pixels of crimson. They are the target. The driver keeps them exactly in the center of his windshield, framed by the frost that creeps in from the corners. The distance is constant. The gap is a rigid beam of invisible connection. If the lead truck moves left, he moves left. If it moves right, he moves right. He is a shadow, a mimic, a secondary component of the primary machine. The ice is transparent here. The headlights cut down into the depths. Beneath the black surface, there are suspended bubbles of methane trapped in the ice like pearls in resin. They are frozen in time, halted in their ascent from the rotting vegetation on the lake bed hundreds of feet below. They look like white jellyfish. There are also cracks, deep, white curtains that hang vertically in the ice, showing where the sheet fractured and healed. These features flash by in the lower periphery of the vision, a scrolling subterranean landscape that is visible only for a split second before being swallowed by the darkness behind. The convoy passes a pressure dial. It is a large, circular crack in the ice formed where water has welled up and frozen in concentric rings. It looks like a giant target painted on the lake. The ice here is humped, stressed. The truck drives over the edge of it. The tires groan. The ice protests with a series of sharp pops like dry twigs snapping. The driver tenses. He feels the floorboard flex under his feet. The sensation is one of riding on a living skin. The truck tilts, then rights itself. The target is left behind, a bullseye that no one hit. The moonlight casts long, terrifying shadows from the snowdrifts. A ridge of snow, only a foot high, casts a shadow that stretches for 20 feet, looking like a deep crevasse. The driver has to learn to read the shadows, to distinguish between a hole in the ice and a shadow on the ice. It is a visual puzzle. The brain works overtime, processing the contrast, calculating the depth. The eyes strain. The hallucinations hover at the edge of the vision. Was that a person standing on the drift? No, just a shadow shaped like a man. Was that a building? No, just a block of ice. The smell of the cabin is changing. The scent of coffee has faded, replaced by the smell of ozone and hot metal. The heater motor is running hot. The smell of dust burning on the resistor coils is faint but persistent. It smells like an old library on fire. It is the smell of entropy. The driver sniffs the air. Is it getting stronger? Is something melting? He scans the darkness under the dash. No smoke. Just the smell of the machine consuming itself to stay warm. The loneliness is a physical weight. It sits on the chest, making it hard to breathe deep. The driver feels small, insignificant. He is a speck of biology in a geological timeline. The ice has been here for 10,000 years. It will be here after he is gone. The truck is just a temporary arrangement of iron and rubber. The cold is the only eternal truth. This existential dread is part of the ice madness that veterans speak of. The silence allows the mind to deconstruct itself. The driver hums a single note, a low, monotone drone that matches the engine. HMMMMM. It vibrates in his chest. It proves he is real. A shift in the ice causes the truck to slide sideways. It is a yaw, a slow rotation around the vertical axis. The rear wheels lose grip on a patch of polished perfection. The trailer swings out, trying to overtake the cab. The driver reacts without thinking. He steers into the slide. He does not touch the brakes. He feathers the throttle. The engine growls. The truck drifts, moving diagonally down the road for 100 feet. It is a graceful, terrifying ballet. Then the tires find a patch of snow. Grip returns. The truck snaps back into line. The heart hammers against the ribs, thump, 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 a frantic counterrhythm to the diesel. The driver exhales a long, shuddering breath. Close. The map on the seat beside him slides to the floor with a soft rustle. It lands in the dark well of the footwell. It is gone. The driver does not reach for it. It is useless anyway. There is no route to check. The route is the tracks. The tracks are the law. To deviate is to die. The map is just a piece of paper with lines that don't match the shifting reality of the winter. Far to the right, a rocky outcrop rises from the ice. It is a small island, a scary, barely larger than the truck itself. It is a dark, jagged tooth of granite punching through the sheet. It is covered in rime ice, looking like a ghost ship frozen in the sea. It is the first solid land they have seen in hours. It offers a momentary sense of scale. The truck passes it slowly. The headlights illuminate the rough texture of the rock, the lichen clinging to the stone, the snow packed in the crevices. It looks ancient, indifferent. It is a landmark of nothingness. Then it falls behind, shrinking in the mirror until it is just another shadow. The driver's watch reads 7:15. The sun should be thinking about rising, but there is no sign of it. The sky is a uniform dome of stars. The false dawn might appear soon, a deceptive lightening of the eastern horizon that fades back into night. The true dawn is hours away. The night is stretching, elastic, and endless. The driver feels like he has been in this cab for days, weeks. The memories of the world before the drive, warm beds, hot showers, voices, are fading, becoming dreamlike and insubstantial. The texture of the drawing is heavy on the negative space. The artist has used the side of the graphite stick to shade large areas of the paper in a uniform gray, creating the illusion of the infinite flat. The truck is drawn with heavy pressure, the lead biting into the paper, creating a dense, black object that anchors the composition. The highlights are erased out, the white of the paper showing through for the snow and the lights. It is a study in isolation. The mechanics of the truck are suffering. The grease in the U-joints of the drive shaft is thick. The shaft vibrates with a low-frequency rumble that shakes the floor. Wub 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 wub. It is a new sound. The driver monitors it. Is it getting worse? If a U-joint fails, the drive shaft will drop, pole vaulting the truck or smashing the fuel tank. He listens. The rhythm is steady. It is just the cold stiffening the metal. He hopes. He keeps his foot steady on the throttle. The window frost has grown. It now covers 3/4 of the side window. The driver scratches a peephole with his fingernail. The ice is hard like cement. He scrapes a small circle enough to see the mirror. Under his fingernail, a collection of white ice shavings gathers. They melt instantly against his skin, turning into cold water. He wipes his hand on his trousers. The wool absorbs the moisture. The thermos is empty. The driver picks it up and shakes it, a hollow rattle. He unscrews the cup and turns the flask upside down. A single cold drop of coffee falls onto the rubber mat. That's it. No more caffeine, no more heat. He is running on reserves now. The body's glycogen is depleted. The shivering is a constant, low-level background activity of the muscles. He clenches his jaw to stop his teeth from chattering. The tension gives him a headache, a dull band of pain across the forehead. The radio clicks. A burst of static, then silence, then another click. It is the automatic squelch control reacting to a signal that is too weak to decode. Someone is trying to talk, or maybe it's just the atmosphere. The driver stares at the radio. The red light on the display glows. "Come in," he whispers. "Say something." But there is only the hiss of the cosmic background radiation. The silence of the radio is louder than the static. It confirms the solitude. The convoy enters a mist patch. This is not the heavy fog of earlier, but a low-lying ground mist no higher than the wheels. It swirls around the tires like dry ice smoke. It glows in the headlights, an ethereal backlit cloud. The truck looks like it is floating on a cloud. The wheels are hidden. The chassis floats. The sensation of speed is distorted. Without the visual reference of the ice texture, the truck feels stationary. The driver glances at the speedometer. 25 mph. He trusts the needle. He drives by faith. A sensation of heat blooms in the driver's hands. It is a phantom sensation, a sign of advanced frostnip. The nerves are confused. They signal heat when there is only cold. He knows this sign. He takes his hands off the wheel one by one and slaps them against his thighs, hard. The pain cuts through the illusion. The hands are cold. Good. Pain is truth. He puts them back on the freezing plastic wheel. The shadows of the windshield wipers stretch across the hood, long black fingers reaching forward. As the truck changes direction slightly, the shadows sweep across the white snow on the hood like the hands of a clock. Time is sweeping away. The journey is a countdown. To what? To the other side. To the end of the night. The driver doesn't know. He just knows he must keep the shadow fingers pointing forward. The engine temperature gauge needle dips. The thermostat is open, sending a rush of supercooled coolant from the radiator into the engine block. The temperature drops rapidly. 160, 150, 140. The engine note changes, becoming rougher, clattering more. The combustion is incomplete. White smoke pours from the stack, unburnt fuel vaporizing in the cold. The driver watches the needle. Close, thermostat, close. It takes a minute. The needle stops falling. It creeps back up. The engine smooths out. The smoke clears. The The thermal cycle completes. The machine shivers and recovers. The texture of the seat belt across the driver's chest is oppressive. It feels like an iron band. He wants to unbuckle it to breathe freely, but he doesn't. The rules are the rules. The belt holds him in the seat when the truck bucks. It is a constraint, but a necessary one. He pulls at it, creating an inch of slack, then lets it retract. Snap. The sound is sharp. Outside, the landscape remains stubbornly unchanged. The same black ice, the same white drifts, the same silver light. It is a loop, a gif of a truck driving on ice repeating forever. The driver blinks and the scene is the same. He blinks again. Same. He starts to count the blinks. 100, 200. The repetition is soothing. It is a mantra of visual sameness. The headlights catch a reflection in the distance. A pair of green eyes. Low to the ground, a fox, an Arctic hare. They stare back for a second, two tiny emeralds in the vast dark, then they vanish. Life. There is life here. It is a shock. How does it survive? What does it eat? The wind, the ice. The driver feels a sudden kinship with the invisible animal. We are both scavengers of the cold, he thinks. We are both just trying to get to the morning. The wind shifts to the nose. A headwind. The resistance increases. The truck pushes a wall of air. The engine labors. The exhaust note deepens to a basso profondo roar. The fuel consumption rises. The driver can feel the drag. It is like driving through syrup. The aerodynamic shape of the truck, a brick, is the worst possible shape for this, but it pushes on. It is a contest of brute force. Diesel versus air. Iron versus wind. The cab light flickers, a loose connection. For a millisecond, the interior is plunged into total darkness, the green gauge lights vanishing. In that instant of absolute black, the driver feels a surge of primal panic. The diving bell has failed, then the lights flicker back on. The world returns. The heart rate spikes. The driver taps the dashboard. "Stay with me," he mutters. The truck is his exoskeleton. If it fails, he is a soft, freezing organism in a hostile universe. The visual style of the scene captures this fragility. The pencil strokes that define the cab interior are shaky, indistinct, suggesting the vibration and the uncertainty. The outside world is drawn with hard, definite lines. The contrast between the vague, trembling interior and the hard, absolute exterior is the central tension of the image. The man is a blur. The ice is a rock. The miles accumulate. 65, 66, 67. The numbers are meaningless. They are just symbols. The only reality is the vibration, the drone, the cold. The driver settles deeper into the coat. He pulls his head down like a turtle. He becomes a shape without features, a bundle of wool and leather driving a block of steel. The ice road continues its straight, unwavering line into the heart of the silver night. There is no turning. There is no stopping. There is only the slow, grinding progression of the convoy, a funeral procession for the concept of warmth, moving toward a destination that exists only on a map, somewhere beyond the curve of the frozen earth. The night has thickened, congealing into a substance that feels heavier than air. The silver clarity of the moon has been swallowed by a high-altitude haze, a veil of ice crystals drifting in the upper atmosphere. The light has dulled, shifting from the sharp, high-contrast monochrome of the previous hour to a murky, flat gray. The world has lost its definition. The horizon, previously a distinct line between the star-filled sky and the black ice, has vanished completely. The convoy is now traveling through a void where up and down are indistinguishable, a seamless sphere of dark pastel smudge. The visual reference points are gone, stripped away by the diffusion of the light. Inside the cab, the cold has won the war of attrition. The heater, laboring for hours against the deepening freeze, has become a source of noise rather than warmth. The air vents blow a stream of tepid air that cools rapidly before it reaches the driver's face. The interior temperature has dropped below freezing. A bottle of water left on the floor near the gear stick is now a solid block of ice, the plastic distended and white. The driver's breath is a constant, rhythmic cloud of fog that obscures the instruments with every exhalation. He has to wipe the gauges with his glove to read them, a repetitive motion that has become a tic. Wipe, read, wait, wipe, read, wait. The texture of the drawing at this stage is gritty and dark. The paper grain is visible through the heavy layers of charcoal and indigo. The artist has pressed hard, embedding the darkness into the fibers. The only light sources, the dashboard and the headlights, are rendered in sickly, pale tones, struggling to push back the encroaching black. The yellow of the headlights is muddy, tinged with the gray of the swirling snow dust. The green of the dash is dim, a dying phosphorescence. The driver's body has stiffened into a rigid posture of endurance. His shoulders are hunched up toward his ears, a subconscious attempt to protect the neck from the draft. His legs are heavy, the muscles dormant and cold. The blood flow to the extremities has constricted to preserve the core. His hands, gripping the wheel, feel like foreign objects, wooden claws attached to the ends of his arms. He looks at them, bulky leather mittens wrapped around black plastic, and they seem to belong to a mannequin. He sends a command to wiggle the thumb. There is a delay. Then slowly the leather moves. The connection is faint, mediated by layers of wool and numbness. The ice beneath the tires has changed character again. They are crossing a section of brittle ice. This is old, hard ice that has been subjected to extreme temperature fluctuations. It is under immense tension. Every time the heavy tires roll over a section, the ice protests. It sounds like pistol shots going off under the truck. Crack, pop, crack. The sounds are sharp, percussive, and incredibly loud in the silence. They vibrate through the floorboards, shooting up the driver's legs like electric shocks. He knows that these are just surface fractures, stress relief cracks that do not threaten the integrity of the sheet. But the lizard brain reacts to every one. The adrenaline spikes, then fades, leaving behind a residue of exhaustion. The vibration of the truck on this brittle ice is harsh. It is a high-frequency chatter that blurs the vision. The rearview mirror vibrates so violently that the headlights of the truck behind appear as a vertical streak of light, a smear of white on black. The driver cannot tell how close the follower is. He relies on faith. He maintains his speed. To slow down is to lose momentum. To speed up is to risk shattering the surface. He holds the throttle steady, his foot a frozen block on the pedal. The smell in the cab has evolved. It is no longer just diesel and ozone. It is the smell of the driver himself, the stale, metallic scent of cold sweat, unwashed wool, and coffee breath. It is the smell of confinement. The air is recycled, breathed in and out 1,000 times, depleted of oxygen and heavy with carbon dioxide. It makes the head swim. The driver yawns, a jaw-cracking stretch that brings tears to his eyes. The tears freeze on his eyelashes instantly, gluing them together. He has to blink forcibly to break the ice seal. Snap. The sound is tiny, intimate. A hallucination begins to form in the peripheral vision. To the left, in the dark gray void, the driver sees a line of trees. They are tall, dark pines covered in snow. They are perfectly still. He turns his head to look at them. They vanish, dissolving back into the shadows of a snowdrift. He looks back at the road. 10 minutes later, they appear again, closer this time. He knows they are not real. There are no trees here, 50 miles from shore. But the brain, starved of visual data, invents them to fill the emptiness. It projects a forest onto the blank canvas of the night. He ignores them. He drives through the ghost forest, the trees passing silently on either side. The radio, silent for hours, emits a sudden high-pitched squeal. It is a burst of heterodyne interference, a collision of radio waves in the ionosphere. It sounds like a scream. The driver jumps, his heart hammering. He reaches out and turns the volume knob all the way down. The silence rushes back in, heavier than before. The scream lingers in his ears, a phantom auditory imprint. Was it a signal, a distress call, or just the sky shrieking? He decides it was the sky. The truck behind is still there. The lights ahead are still there. The mission is intact. The convoy approaches a step. This is a vertical displacement in the ice, a fault line where one plate has dropped a few inches below the other. It is a jarring obstacle. The scout team has ramped it with snow, but the ramp is hard and uneven. The truck slows. The driver downshifts. The gears grind, the synchronization sluggish in the cold. He finds third gear. The engine roars. The front wheels hit the ramp. The cab pitches up, then slams down. Bang. The suspension bottoms out. The tools in the door pocket fly up and clatter back down. The driver's head snaps forward, then back against the headrest. The rear wheels hit. Bang, bang. The trailer follows. The coupling groans under the torsion. Then they are across. The road is flat again. The driver upshifts. The rhythm resumes. The stress of the impact lingers in the chassis. The truck feels different now. Is there a vibration that wasn't there before? A pull to the left. The driver scans the gauges. Air pressure is normal. Oil pressure is normal, but the machine feels bruised. It is a sympathetic sensation. The driver feels bruised too. Every jolt to the truck is a jolt to the body. They are sharing the trauma of the road. The windshield wipers are frozen solid to the glass. They are black bars interrupting the view. Snow has begun to accumulate on them, building a small ridge of white that creeps up the glass. The viewable area is shrinking. The tunnel is narrowing. The driver leans forward, his chest against the steering wheel, trying to look over the ridge of snow. He is driving through a slit in the armor. The world is reduced to a strip of gray ice and red lights. The fatigue is now a narcotic. It pulls at the consciousness, a warm, heavy tide that wants to drown the mind. The driver fights it with small, physical acts. He bites the inside of his cheek until he tastes the copper tang of blood. He pinches his thigh through the wool trousers. He sings a song in his head, a repetitive nursery rhyme that loops over and over. Row, row, row your boat. The tempo matches the thrum of the engine. Life is but a dream. The lyrics feel profound in the surreal isolation. Is this a dream? Is he really here? The headlights catch a glint of metal on the ice. It is a discarded fuel drum, crushed flat by previous trucks. It is a rusted orange circle embedded in the blue-white road. It looks like a fossil, a remnant of the industrial age frozen in the prehistoric ice. The driver steers around it. The tires miss it by inches. He watches it disappear in the mirror. It is the only color he has seen in hours. That flash of orange burns in his memory, a vibrant scar on the gray retina. The temperature outside has hit the absolute bottom, -55. At this temperature, steel becomes brittle as glass. Rubber becomes hard plastic. The very air seems to thicken. The truck pushes through it with audible effort. The aerodynamics are changing. The drag is immense. The fuel gauge is dropping faster now. The engine is burning diesel just to keep its own internal fire from being extinguished by the entropy of the universe. The driver taps the gauge. "Drink up," he whispers. "Keep us warm." The vastness of the lake is oppressive. It feels infinite. The driver cannot imagine the shore anymore. He cannot imagine trees or houses or grass. The world is ice. It has always been ice. It will always be ice. This is the whiteout of the mind, where the past and future are erased by the overwhelming monotony of the present. The driver is a prisoner of the immediate moment. A new sound emerges from under the hood. A chirping noise. Chirp, chirp, chirp. It is a belt slipping. The alternator belt, stiff with cold, is losing its grip on the pulley. The driver watches the voltmeter. The needle dips slightly with each chirp. The electrical system is faltering. He holds his breath. If the belt snaps, the water pump stops. The engine will overheat paradoxically in the freezing cold, or the batteries will die. He wills the belt to hold. The chirping continues for a mile, a nerve-wracking avian sound in the mechanical beast. Then, as friction generates heat, the rubber softens slightly. The grip returns. The chirping stops. The needle steadies. The crisis passes, leaving a knot of tension in the stomach. The texture of the drawing shifts to emphasize the frost. The artist uses white chalk to stipple the edges of the page, closing in the vignette. The center of the image, the road, is dark and blurry. The focus is on the frame, the barrier between the inside and the outside. The frost patterns are intricate fractal geometries that grow before the eyes. They are the fingerprints of the cold. The driver's feet are blocks of ice. He cannot feel the pedals anymore. He operates them by position and muscle memory. He knows how much pressure to apply to the throttle by the angle of his ankle, not by the sensation of the pedal. It is a dangerous numbness. He stamps his feet again. Thud, thud. No sensation, just the sound. He worries about frostbite. He wiggles his toes. He thinks they are moving, but he isn't sure. He visualizes the blood flowing down, warm and red, fighting the white death. The darkness ahead is not empty. It is filled with the swirling snow dust kicked up by the lead truck. This dust hangs in the air, a long, serpentine cloud that glows red from the taillights. The driver follows the red cloud. It is his guide. It flows like a river of smoke. Sometimes it thickens, obscuring the lights completely. Then he has to guess. He holds the wheel straight. He prays the road doesn't turn. Then the cloud thins and the lights reappear. It is a game of peekaboo with mortality. The convoy passes a route marker. It is a large plywood sign frozen into a snowbank. It is covered in rime, illegible. It might say mile 80 or danger or checkpoint. It doesn't matter. It is just a shape. The driver notes it as a distinct event in the timeline. A sign happened. Then silence resumed. The sign is a relic of human intention in a landscape of indifference. The engine drone creates a resonance in the driver's skull. He feels the sound inside his head, vibrating the small bones of the ear. It is a loud silence. He tries to hum against it to create a dissonance, but his voice is weak. The engine wins. It is the dominant frequency. It aligns the brain waves to its own rhythm. The driver is in theta state, a waking dream. He sees the road, but he is also floating above it, watching the truck from the sky. He snaps back. Focus. The ice surface is marred by sastrugi again, hard ridges of wind-blown snow. The truck shudders over them. Rat-a-tat-tat. The headlights shake. The shadows dance. It is like driving over a washboard. The vibration makes the vision blur. The red lights ahead smear into horizontal lines. The driver grits his teeth. The fillings in his molars buzz. The truck is being shaken apart. The driver is being shaken apart. It is a test of structural integrity for both. Far to the east, a faint, almost imperceptible lightening of the sky begins. It is not dawn. It is the nautical twilight, the very first hint that the sun exists somewhere in the universe. It is a shift from black to deep, deep navy. It is subtle. A casual observer would not notice it, but the driver, starved for light, sees it. It is a promise. It is the first crack in the prison of the night. He stares at it. It doesn't get brighter. It just sits there, a faint bruise on the horizon. But it changes the mood. The bottom has been reached. The climb out has begun. The driver reaches for the map light again, forgetting it is broken. Click. Nothing. He curses again. The habit is hard to break. He wants to see the time. He leans forward, putting his face inches from the dash. The radium paint on the clock hands is faint. 7:55. The night is 12 hours long so far. It feels like 12 years. The cold draft from the window sill is a knife blade on the left cheek. The skin is raw, chapped, and burning. The driver pulls his scarf up, covering his nose and mouth completely. He breathes through the wool. The moisture of his breath warms the fabric, creating a wet, warm mask. It is uncomfortable, wet and scratchy, but it is better than the freezing air. He is a bandit of the ice, masked and silent. The truck hits a smooth patch. The vibration stops. The silence is sudden and overwhelming. The tires hiss. The engine hums. The contrast makes the ears ring. The driver relaxes his grip on the wheel. The blood flows back into the palms, pins and needles. The sensation is excruciating. He gasps. It feels like his hands are on fire. He rubs them on his thighs. The pain is good. It means the nerves are alive. The lead truck signals a turn. The left blinker flashes. Wink, wink, wink. It is a slow, amber pulse. The convoy is adjusting course to avoid a known pressure ridge field. The driver engages his own signal. The click of the relay is loud in the cab. Click, clack, click, clack. It is a human sound, a mechanical communication. He turns the wheel. The truck banks slowly to the left. The headlights sweep across a field of jumbled ice blocks, illuminating the chaos they are avoiding. Giant slabs of blue ice, standing vertical like tombstones, frozen in a chaotic war. Then the view returns to the flat dark. The turn is completed. The straight line resumes. The blinker is canceled. The silence returns. The detour was a brief excitement. Now back to the grind. The drawing of the scene is now dominated by the heavy, oppressive gray of the false dawn. The contrast is low. Everything is a shade of slate. The truck is a dark gray block on a light gray road under a medium gray sky. It is a study in depression. There is no color left in the world. Even the red lights look dull, maroon against the gray. The world has been desaturated. The driver feels a pang of hunger that is sharp and twisting. The stomach cramps. He ignores it. He cannot eat. The idea of food is nauseating. The body has switched to a different metabolic state, burning its own reserves. He feels lightheaded, airy. The connection to the physical world is thinning. He is just a pair of eyes and a pair of hands floating in a gray box. The convoy rolls on. The wheels turn. The pistons fire. The ice waits. The false dawn hangs on the horizon, a teaser, a suggestion of light that refuses to arrive. The supply run continues its slow, inexorable march across the frozen face of the deep. The transition from night to morning in the high latitudes is not an event, but a process of slow, agonizing desaturation. The darkness does not lift so much as it dissolves into a pervasive, milky gray that seeps into the world from every direction simultaneously. There is no specific point on the horizon where the sun threatens to rise. Instead, the entire dome of the sky lightens uniformly, turning from the deep, crushing indigo of the night to the flat, opaque color of slate. The visual style of the scene shifts dramatically. The heavy charcoal strokes that define the darkness are replaced by broad, horizontal washes of pale gray pastel. The contrast evaporates. The sharp shadows of the moonlit hours are erased, replaced by a shadowless, flat light that destroys depth perception and turns the landscape into a two-dimensional canvas. The convoy moves through this gray void like a collection of dark artifacts from a forgotten age. The headlights, once the piercing yellow eyes of the beast, are now rendered impotent. Their beams struggle to cast any illumination against the brightening snow. They appear as pale, sickly cones of amber fog, visible only as a faint tint on the white ground. The red tail lights of the truck ahead lose their incandescent fury, fading to dull, matte squares of maroon paint. The magic of the contrast is gone, leaving only the stark, industrial reality of dirty metal and frozen rubber against an endless background of nothing. Inside the cab, the arrival of the light is an intrusion. The darkness was a blanket, a hiding place where the driver could retreat into his own thoughts. The gray light reveals the squalor of the confinement. It illuminates the layer of gray dust that covers the dashboard, the grease stains on the passenger seat, the dirty rime of frost on the window cranks. It shows the cracks in the vinyl, the cigarette burns on the floor mat, the empty wrappers and the coffee stains. The mystery of the night is stripped away, leaving a gritty, uncomfortable reality. The driver blinks against the light. His eyes, dilated for hours in the gloom, ache with a dull, throbbing pressure. He pulls the visor down. It is a futile gesture. The light comes from everywhere, reflecting off the ice, the snow, the sky. There is no shade in a world made of mirrors. The ice surface, now visible for the first time in 10 hours, is a terrifying expanse. In the dark, it was just a surface to drive on. In the light, it is a vast, scarred skin. The driver can see the network of cracks that spiderweb across the blue-gray sheet. Some are hairline fractures, sealed tight. Others are wide, healed scars of white, refrozen slush. He sees the variations in color, the deep, terrifying black of the thin ice, the milky white of the air-filled ice, the blue of the solid pack. He realizes he has been driving over a mosaic of fragility. The ignorance of the night was a mercy. Now, he has to watch the wheels roll over the scars. The convoy is approaching a portage. This is a section where the ice road leaves the lake and crosses a small strip of land, a peninsula or an island, to bypass a section of open water or rough pressure ridges. The shoreline appears out of the gray mist as a dark, jagged line. It looks like a tear in the paper. The trees are black skeletons, spruce and pine frozen into statues of charcoal. They are covered in kali, the heavy, accumulated snow that bends their branches down toward the earth. They look mournful, bowing in submission to the cold. The transition from ice to land is violent. The smooth, singing silence of the lake is shattered instantly. The tires hit the frozen earth of the portage ramp. Crunch, bang, rattle. The sound is deafening. The suspension, stiff from the cold, hammers against the chassis. The truck shakes convulsively. The peaceful trance of the ice drive is broken. The driver fights the wheel. The ruts in the earth are deep and hard as concrete. The truck bounces, lurching from side to side. The engine roar changes pitch as the load on the drivetrain fluctuates wildly. The cab fills with the noise of rattling tools, squeaking plastic, and the groaning of the frame. Driving on the land feels heavier. The friction of the frozen gravel and snow is immense compared to the ice. The truck feels sluggish, dragged down by the earth. The driver has to downshift. Fourth gear, third gear. The engine screams at high RPMs to pull the load up the slight incline. The smell of the exhaust changes, becoming richer and hotter as the turbocharger works harder. The smoke from the stack turns black, a thick plume that hangs in the still air of the trees. The trees on either side of the narrow track are close enough to touch. Their branches brush against the side of the trailer, scrape, scrape. It sounds like dry fingers clawing at the metal. The driver looks at the trees. They are real. They have bark, needles, texture. After hours of the abstract geometry of the ice, the organic complexity of the forest is overwhelming. He sees the texture of the bark, the patterns of the lichen. It is a sensory overload. He feels a sudden, sharp longing to stop, to get out, to touch a tree, to verify that the world is solid. But he cannot stop. The convoy pushes on, a line of steel invaders in the silent woods. The portage is short, only a mile across the finger of land. The road twists and turns, following the path of least resistance between the rocks and the trees. The steering requires actual effort now, hand over hand. The driver's shoulders burn. The physical exertion wakes him up slightly, pumping a little more blood into the numbing extremities. He feels the sweat break out under his heavy coat, a cold, clammy layer of moisture that instantly chills against his skin. Then the trees thin out. The white void reappears ahead. The truck noses down the ramp back onto the lake. The transition back to the ice is a relief and a horror. The banging stops. The silence rushes back in. The tires begin to sing again. The truck floats. But now the security of the land is gone. The driver is back on the skin of the water. The contrast between the violent, noisy earth and the silent, deadly ice is stark. He prefers the ice. The ice is honest. The land was a struggle. As the morning deepens, the temperature drops again. This is the sunrise dip, a meteorological phenomenon where the air cools just before the sun breaks the horizon. The thermometer in the cab, if it worked, would read 55 below zero. The cold is now a solid presence. It has weight. It presses against the glass. The frost on the windows, which had melted slightly during the exertion of the portage, freezes instantly again, blooming across the glass in seconds. The driver watches the white ferns grow. They move fast like time-lapse photography. He is being sealed in. The atmospheric optics of the false dawn create a whiteout condition. The sky is white-gray. The ice is white-gray. The horizon is gone. There is no way to tell where the earth ends and the sky begins. The truck is suspended in a sphere of milk. The driver loses his sense of orientation. Is he driving uphill, downhill? Is the truck banking? The inner ear is confused. The only reference point is the dark square of the truck ahead. He locks his eyes onto it. It is the only anchor in the void. If he looks away, vertigo sets in immediately. A spinning sensation that makes him grip the wheel until his knuckles turn white inside the mittens. The fatigue has moved beyond simple tiredness into a state of dissociation. The driver feels like he is floating above his own body. He watches his hands steer the truck. He wonders whose hands they are. They look old, worn, covered in dark leather. He hears his own breathing, but it sounds like a bellows in the room, separate from his lungs. He is a ghost haunting a machine. The separation is a defense mechanism. The mind cannot handle the monotony and the stress, so it uncouples from the reality. A sun dog appears in the sky to the east. It is a faint vertical rainbow, a parhelion caused by the refraction of light through the ice crystals in the air. It is a pale, ghostly patch of color, red on the inside, fading to blue on the white. It looks like a mock sun, a false promise of warmth. The driver stares at it. It is beautiful and cold. It hangs there, motionless, a sentinel of the morning. It adds to the surreal quality of the scene. The drawing style here would use very faint touches of pastel pink and blue, almost invisible against the gray, to hint at the spectrum that is trapped in the ice. The convoy enters a field of overflow that has frozen over but remains slushy underneath. The color of the ice changes to a dark, wet gray. The texture looks greasy. The truck hits it. The sound changes to a wet, heavy shhhshhh. The drag increases. It feels like driving through wet cement. The driver keeps the throttle pinned. The engine labors. The temperature gauge rises slightly as the load increases. The slush sprays up into the wheel wells, freezing into heavy chunks of clinker ice that bang against the fenders. The driver prays the slush isn't too deep. If the truck bogs down, it will freeze in place within minutes. The tires spin slightly, hunting for traction. The tachometer flickers. Then the tires bite into solid ice again. The truck lurches forward. The danger passes, leaving a fresh layer of gray slush on the flanks of the vehicle. The driver's hunger has morphed into a dull nausea. His stomach is an empty knot. He tries to take a sip of water from the second bottle he kept in his coat pocket. It is slushy but liquid. The water is freezing cold. It hits his stomach like a stone. He shudders. The cold is inside him now. He feels it radiating from his core. He is turning into ice from the inside out. The windshield wiper on the driver's side has collected a massive clump of ice. It is heavy, weighing down the arm. The wind catches it, lifting it slightly off the glass, then slamming it back down. Slap, slap, slap. The sound is irregular, annoying. It breaks the rhythm of the drone. The driver glares at it. He wants to open the window and reach out to snap the ice off, but he knows better. To open the window now is to invite the frostbite in. He endures the slapping. It is a minor torture in the grand scheme. The rearview mirror is useless. It is coated in a thick layer of road dust and ice spray. The driver can no longer see the truck behind him. He feels a spike of anxiety. Is the follower still there? Has he broken down, dropped through the ice? The driver slows down slightly, watching the side mirror. He sees a faint, blurry shape in the mist behind, a dark blob. It is there. The chain is unbroken. He speeds up again. The fear of being the last truck is primal. The last truck is the one the wolves catch. The cab is filled with the light of the gray morning, but it is a cold light. It does not warm the skin. It feels sterile, clinical. It highlights the fatigue in the driver's face, reflected in the dark glass of the gauges. Deep lines, red-rimmed eyes, pale skin with patches of windburn. He looks like a survivor of a shipwreck. He feels like one. The monotony of the visual field triggers road hypnosis of a deeper kind. The driver starts to see patterns in the ice that aren't there. Faces in the snow drifts, words written in the cracks. Stop, geoback, sleep. The words are formed by the random intersection of lines and shadows. The brain tries to make sense of the noise. The driver shakes his head. No, he mutters, just ice, just ice. His voice cracks. It is the first word he has spoken in hours. It sounds foreign, rusty. The truck passes a scout shack. It is a small, portable hut on skids, dragged out onto the ice for the maintenance crews. It is dark, abandoned for the moment, no smoke from the chimney. It looks incredibly lonely, a tiny box of plywood against the infinite white. The driver imagines being inside it, sitting in the dark, listening to the wind, waiting for a truck to pass. It is a terrifying thought. He is glad to be moving. Even in the cold cab, motion is life. The engine begins to develop a lope. The idle is uneven. Vroom, 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 vroom. The fuel is getting too cold, waxing in the filters despite the heaters. The viscosity is changing. The injection pump is struggling to meter the thick fluid. The driver listens with a mechanic's ear. He knows the sound. It is the sound of the limit approaching. He reaches down and turns on the electric fuel pump assist. A new hum is added to the mix. The loping smooths out, but the engine note remains rough. It is complaining. It wants to stop. It wants to be warm. The sun is still below the horizon, but its influence is growing. The gray sky begins to differentiate. Darker clouds form bands in the west. Lighter patches appear in the east. The world is regaining its geometry. The horizon line reemerges, a faint, blurry seam between the white earth and the white sky. This return of the horizon is stabilizing. The vertigo fades. The driver can see the curve of the earth again. The convoy is now traveling over the deepest part of the lake, the abyss. Here, the water is 1,000 feet deep. The ice is actually thinner here, insulated by the vast thermal mass of the water, but it is more consistent. It bends more under the weight. The driver feels the wave more distinctly. The truck is constantly climbing a microscopic hill of ice that it pushes in front of itself. It is a sensation of perpetual resistance. The truck is surfing the deflection. A raven flies parallel to the truck. It is a shock of black against the white. It matches the truck's speed, gliding on the air currents displaced by the vehicle. It turns its head to look at the driver with a beady black eye. It seems intelligent, curious. It is the only living thing in the whiteout. The driver watches it. "Morning," he whispers. The bird flaps its wings once, a slow, deliberate movement, and veers away, vanishing into the mist. A messenger from the void. The heater fan begins to smell of burning plastic. The motor is overheating. The driver reaches out and turns it down to the lowest setting. The noise drops. The silence increases. The cold air begins to reclaim the footwell immediately. It creeps up the legs like rising water. The driver accepts it. He pulls the blanket tighter. The heater was a luxury anyway. The engine heat is the only thing that matters. The texture of the drawing is now extremely subtle. The artist uses the texture of the paper itself to represent the snow. The shading is minimal. The truck is a dark, detailed silhouette against a background of almost pure emptiness. The focus is on the isolation. The negative space is the subject of the image. The truck is just an intruder. The driver's watch reads 9:00 a.m. It is morning technically, but it feels like a different planet's morning. A planet further from the sun. A planet made of ice and iron. The time has no meaning here. The shift ends when the truck stops. That is the only clock. The road ahead straightens out perfectly. For 10 miles, it is a ruler straight line drawn on the ice. The ruts are deep and black, filled with the shadows of the morning. The driver settles the tires into the grooves. The truck steers itself. He relaxes his grip. He lets the machine do the work. He is just the passenger now, the observer, the witness to the cold. The false dawn stretches on. It refuses to become day. The sun is lazy, reluctant to rise. The gray hour lengthens into a gray morning. The convoy pushes through the soup. The wheels turn. The ice groans. The driver blinks, his eyelids heavy as lead shutters. He is waiting for the sun, but he is also afraid of it. The sun will reveal the true distance remaining. The sun will show him how far he still has to go. In the gray, he can pretend the end is just beyond the mist. The sun finally breaches the horizon. It is not a triumphant sunrise. It is a slow, bleeding wound in the eastern sky, a flat disk of dull crimson that seems unable to lift itself fully clear of the earth. It hangs heavy and low, casting a light that is devoid of warmth. This light is red and horizontal, streaming across the ice in long, parallel rays that catch every ridge of snow, every shard of uplifted ice, and throws a shadow stretching for miles behind it. The world is suddenly rendered in a high-contrast palette of blood red and deep, slate-blue shadow. The gray ambiguity of the false dawn is burned away, replaced by this harsh, geometric clarity. The vintage drawing style shifts to capture this, using heavy strokes of sanguine chalk against the cold, blue-gray paper, creating a landscape that looks bruised and frozen. The convoy, illuminated by this low-angle light, casts shadows that are longer than the trucks themselves. The dark shapes of the vehicles stretch out to the west, distorted ghosts of machinery sliding over the ice. The driver squints against the glare. The visor is useless against a sun that sits at eye level. He pulls his sunglasses from the dash, the metal frames freezing cold against his temples. The lenses turn the red world into a murky green one, dampening the intensity of the light, but doing nothing to warm the air. The interior of the cab remains a refrigerator, the sunlight merely illuminating the frost that encrusts every surface. Ahead, the shoreline begins to resolve from the mist. It is a rugged, inhospitable coast, a wall of dark rock and stunted spruce trees that rises abruptly from the flatness of the lake. There is no beach, only a jumble of granite boulders locked in the ice, covered in a thick glaze of spray that has frozen into bulbous, organic shapes. The destination is visible now, a cluster of low, rectangular structures huddled against the tree line, their roofs heavy with snow, their chimneys emitting thin, vertical columns of white smoke. It is the mining outpost, the terminus of the road. It looks less like a settlement and more like a collection of discarded crates left to weather in the Arctic wind. The transition from the deep lake to the shore approach is marked by a change in the ice texture. The smooth, black ice gives way to rough, white shore ice, a chaotic zone where the tides and the thermal expansion of the lake have crushed the frozen surface against the land. The road here is a plowed trench through a field of rubble. Walls of broken ice blocks, some as high as the truck, stand on either side of the track. They glow with a translucent blue inner light where the sun hits them. The truck drives through this canyon of crystal. The sound of the tires changes from a hum to a crunching roar. The suspension works hard, absorbing the uneven terrain. The cab rocks violently side to side. The driver fights the wheel, his arms burning with the effort, his fatigue momentarily forgotten in the physical struggle of the final mile. The engine senses the end. The idle drops slightly as the driver lifts his foot, letting the momentum carry the heavy machine over the rough patches. The transmission whines in a lower pitch. The smell of the land returns, not the smell of earth, but the smell of wood smoke, coal dust, and raw diesel stored in cold tanks. It is a dirty, industrial smell, a sharp contrast to the sterile purity of the lake air. It enters the cab through the vents, a signal that the vacuum of the crossing is over. The truck climbs the final ramp. It is a steep berm of gravel and ice built over the boulders to bridge the gap between the lake and the solid ground. The tires spin for a fraction of a second, seeking grip on the loose surface, then bite. The engine roars, a deep, guttural bellow of torque. The front wheels crest the ramp. The horizon drops. The truck levels out on the hard-packed snow of the outpost yard. The sensation of driving on land is immediate and heavy. The floating feeling of the ice is gone, replaced by a solid, jarring connection to the earth. The vibration is coarser, the feedback through the steering wheel dead and heavy. The outpost yard is a desolate theater of industry. There are no people visible, only machines. A large yellow bulldozer sits motionless near a snowbank, its blade resting on the ground like a sleeping head. A crane stands silent, its cable swaying gently in the wind. The buildings are windowless, or their windows are boarded up against the cold. The siding is weathered gray wood, scoured by the blowing snow until the grain stands out in high relief. The only movement is the smoke and the steam venting from pipes, evidence of the life support systems working furiously inside the shells. The convoy slows to a crawl. The lead truck activates its hazard lights. Click, 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 click. The amber flashes reflect off the snow walls of the yard. The driver follows, guiding his truck into the designated unloading area. It is a slow, precise ballet. He watches the mirror lining up the rear of the trailer with a row of empty fuel drums. He shifts into reverse. The gears grind, a protest of cold metal. The backup alarm beeps, a shrill, piercing sound that echoes off the buildings. Beep, beep, beep. It is the sound of arrival, mechanical and insistent. He backs the truck up. The trailer articulates, swinging into position. He watches the gap close. 5 feet, 3 feet, 1 foot. He hits the brakes. The air system sneezes, pshhhht. The truck rocks on its suspension and settles. It is stopped. For the first time in 12 hours, the wheels are not turning. The sensation is disorienting. The driver's inner ear is still moving, still processing the phantom motion of the ice. He feels like the cab is tilting, but the horizon is steady. The sea legs of the ice road have taken hold. He shifts the transmission into neutral. The gear stick wobbles loosely in the gate. He pulls the yellow diamond-shaped knob of the parking brake. Hiss clunk. The brakes lock. The truck is anchored. The journey is physically over, but the machine is still alive. The engine idles, a steady, rhythmic thumping that vibrates the mirrors. The driver sits for a moment, his hands still on the wheel. He does not want to let go. To let go is to acknowledge the pain in his fingers, the stiffness in his back, the overwhelming weight of the exhaustion. He stares at the wooden wall of the warehouse in front of him. It is just wood, rough, frozen wood. But it is the most beautiful thing he has ever seen because it is stationary. He goes through the shutdown checklist. It is a slow, deliberate ritual. Turn off the headlights. The yellow beams vanish, leaving the yard in the natural, flat light of the morning. Turn off the heater fan. The drone stops, revealing the ticking of the cooling metal. Turn off the radio. The static cuts out. Turn off the fuel pump assist. The hum dies. The cab becomes quieter, layer by layer, stripping away the sounds that have sustained him through the night. Finally, the engine. He reaches for the key, a small piece of brass in the ignition. He turns it to the left. The solenoid clicks. The fuel is cut off. The massive diesel engine shudders once, twice as the compression fights the inertia and then falls silent. The silence that follows is not empty. It is heavy, thick, and ringing. It rushes into the cab, filling every corner, pressing against the driver's ears. It is a physical pressure. After 12 hours of constant noise, the absence of sound is deafening. The ringing in his ears is a high-pitched whistle, the ghost of the turbocharger. The driver sits in the silence. He can hear his own heart beating. Thump, 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 thump. He can hear the ticking of the cooling exhaust manifold. Tick, tick, tick. It sounds like a clock slowing down. He can hear the wind sighing around the corner of the building. He exhales, a long, ragged breath that fogs the windshield one last time. He watches the condensation fade, retreating from the glass as the interior temperature begins to equalize with the outside. He unbuckles the seat belt. The mechanism is stiff. He has to tug at it. It releases with a sharp snap that sounds like a gunshot in the quiet cab. The strap retracts slowly, lazily. He opens the door. The latch is frozen. He has to shoulder it open. Crunch. The seal breaks. The door swings out. The Arctic air floods in, not as a draft, but as an ocean. It is pure, biting cold, cleaner and sharper than the air on the lake. It smells of pine needles and snow. He swings his legs out. His boots hit the metal step. He grips the grab handle. His muscles are stiff, protesting the movement. He lowers himself to the ground. His boots crunch into the hard-packed snow. The sound is loud, crunch, crunch. He stands there, holding onto the door frame, steadying himself. The ground feels incredibly solid. It does not sway. It does not groan. It is rock and earth, frozen for eternity. It pushes back against his feet. He walks to the front of the truck. He looks at the machine. It is covered in a thick layer of road rime, a gray-white armor of ice and frozen slush. The grille is clogged with snow. The headlights are glazed over. Icicles hang from the bumper. It looks like a beast that has emerged from the deep ocean, frozen in the act of breathing. The radiator ticks. Heat radiates from the metal, creating a shimmering wave of distortion in the cold air. The truck is cooling down, shedding the energy of the drive into the atmosphere. Other drivers are emerging from their cabs down the line. They move like old men, stiff and slow. They do not speak. They nod to each other, small gestures of acknowledgement in the cold. There is no celebration, no cheering, just the silent communion of survival. They are dark shapes against the white snow, bundled in their wool and leather, moving toward the bunkhouse. The bunkhouse is a low building with a single yellow light above the door. It promises heat. It promises sleep. The driver follows them. He walks past the line of trucks. The convoy is a dormant dragon, a line of sleeping iron giants. They have done their work. They have carried the weight across the void. Now they rest. The driver looks back at the lake. The horizon is a flat white line. The road he just traveled is invisible, lost in the glare of the low sun. It is as if the road never existed, as if the truck materialized here out of the ether. The lake keeps its secrets. He reaches the door of the bunkhouse. He stomps the snow off his boots. Thump, thump. He pulls the handle. The door opens. A rush of warm, stale air hits him. It smells of frying bacon, coffee, and drying socks. It is the smell of humanity. He steps inside. The door closes behind him with a heavy thud, sealing out the wind, the cold, and the silence. Outside, the scene remains. The vintage drawing captures the stillness of the aftermath. The trucks are rendered in heavy, dark charcoal, their details obscured by the frost. The snow is a blinding white, shaded with blue in the hollows. The sky is a pale, washed-out blue, cold and distant. The sun is a small, hard coin of red gold. Nothing moves. The wind picks up a few grains of snow and blows them across the tire tracks, beginning the slow work of erasure. The heat from the truck engines rises straight up in the still air, creating pillars of shimmering distortion that fade into the sky. The metal contracts as it cools. Ping. A sound from the engine block. Tink. A sound from the exhaust pipe. These are the only sounds left. The machine is settling into its hibernation. The oil in the sumps begins to thicken, turning back into the sludge it wants to be. The grease in the bearings stiffens. The tires, flat-spotted where they touch the freezing ground, harden into black stone. The shadows of the trucks move slowly across the snow as the sun creeps higher. They are like sundials marking the passage of a time that no longer matters. The supply run is complete. The loop is closed. The cargo is delivered. The duty is done. The visual focus pulls back, widening the view. The trucks become smaller, dark rectangles in a vast field of white. The buildings of the outpost become small gray boxes. The trees become a line of black ink. The lake becomes an infinite sheet of white paper. The drawing becomes simpler, more abstract. The details fade. The noise fades. The anxiety fades. There is only the cold. The eternal, patient cold that waits for the engines to stop, for the fires to go out, for the movement to cease. It reclaims the space between the molecules. It settles over the trucks like a shroud. It freezes the steam from the vents into diamond dust that falls slowly to the ground. It is the final layer of the drawing, a wash of white silence that covers everything. The story of the crossing is written in the temporary tracks on the ice, tracks that the wind is already scrubbing away. By nightfall, the lake will be pristine again, a blank page waiting for the next pencil, the next tire, the next struggle. But for now, there is rest. There is the heavy, dreamless sleep of the weary.